We had a hearing today, and it was streamed live. We got to watch as we heard from the Trump campaign's lawyer under oath about evidence that there was voter fraud in many states. Again, let me stress that for you, because many on the left and the mainstream media don't seem to understand this. The Trump campaign lawyers stated definitively under oath, this is our evidence of voter fraud. If you think they're lying, please, send the prosecutor and give me some perjury charges, all right? Make it happen. But for now, you can't keep saying they have not presented their case under oath, and you can't keep saying there's no evidence, because they certainly presented it. Well, Rand Paul steps up and he says, in many ways, the election was stolen, there was fraud, and something must be done. He didn't go as far as to say because of fraud, which is the fancy phrase that YouTube will ban us for, but he did make a pretty bold statement. And that means to many people, Rand Paul is going to be the senator who joins the House member Republican, probably Mo Brooks, and disputes the electoral vote come January 6th. And in my opinion, this means nothing, because the Republicans have no political willpower and probably will do nothing. And Mitch McConnell's already begging Republicans to roll over and let the Democrats do what they want. So I certainly imagine that come January 6th, you may see some principled Republicans, and you'll see most of them go, but I don't wanna. Can't we just let the Democrats do it? It's so much easier. Welcome to politics, everybody. Today, we're hanging out with Jack Murphy.
Hey, everybody. Good to be back.
Yeah.
Schedule got messed up for a little bit, but here we are, Wednesday night. It's good to see you, Lydia.
Made it through the blizzard.
Made it through the blizzard. Nothing was going to keep me away tonight. Nothing at all. 4-wheel drive, 35 miles an hour. Nice and slow. Yeah, man.
You, man.
So when they says it's I guess the biggest nor'easter in a decade or whatever that's hit the area.
Wow.
And people were like, "Is Jack going to be safe? He's going to make it?" I was like,
I was
like, Jack's driving 4x4. He's not gonna flinch from this.
Tim he scoffed when I said, I don't know. I told Jack maybe he shouldn't come up.
He
tonight.
did. Ian did, and then Lydia went out in the street, took a picture. She's like, "It's all good. Don't worry about it. I'm from Midwest, man. I can deal with this." Plus, in DC, it snowed 40 inches. And then, 2 days later, it snowed 40 inches again.
Whoa, wait, recently?
Yeah, 10 years ago.
Oh,
it was
right
called
on.
Snowmageddon.
Yeah.
Oh,
So this 12 inches is nothing.
Yeah, I know. Not only that, I was like, if Jack can't make it up while being this, 6'5" bearded man, I demand he walk here through the rugged snow. Like, I'm coming on the
Nothing's going to stop me, Tim. Nothing's going to stop me from seeing you. I've missed you, dude.
Right.
I took a week off.
I've missed you,
nice.
Ian.
And we don't live on a mountaintop. I kind of was like over dramatizing like how far deep into the woods
we actually kind of do.
Yeah,
kind of.
We do.
Yeah.
Not the top because it goes up more in the back, but we're in mountainous areas.
Definitely.
But it's not like Everest or anything. But it's elevated.
There's a freeway.
Yeah. Well, Luke's hanging out too.
Well, hi, I am the optimistic residential Uncle Eddie. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
That's it?
Yeah.
You normally have some ridiculous dumb thing to say?
Yeah, I always
No, you're
do.
Uncle Rico.
Luke
No.
shoveled the ice and snow off his RV today.
He did, yeah.
I
Yes.
got video of it.
Yes.
And he was trying to throw snowballs, but his aim was awful.
Terrible aim.
Next time, do the sidewalk to the door while you're at it. Eh?
No.
But we have a guy who lives close by has a plow.
Tim's
care of it.
12-mile approach, from the street up the driveway takes about 25 minutes to drive it up.
It's true, yeah.
The whole thing was totally plowed.
We
It was
tried.
amazing.
We tried using an old skate deck to go down it.
Oh my
So
God.
But you
funny.
start going so fast because it's not. It wasn't snow. It was slush and sleet and ice.
Is that why there was just that one random skate deck on the porch when
Yep.
I came
Yeah,
up?
yeah,
That's
soaking
why.
wet.
That was
Because
your-
we were jumping
your
on
sled?
it, and then once you get to 60 miles an hour, you give up and then slide down. No, we didn't go that fast. You could totally, and then you'd lose control and just flip out. But the cool thing about it is when you fall, you just slide down the asphalt. It's just it's ice. It's cold. That's about it. So yeah, that's what's going on here. And one more thing, I'll give a shout out to Verizon for 6 months ago. We were supposed to have internet installed. They finally show up, installed the wrong box, told us they finished the job. They didn't. We have no way to connect to it. And now we're sitting here, and the Verizon keeps calling us being like, but it's already set up. And I'm like, dude, there's nothing that connects. We had an IT guy come out, and he's like, you can't connect to this. It's a Verizon equipment.
It's the magic of
They won't come
corporatocracy.
out.
It's amazing your 2400 dial up here has been performing so well.
All right.
And the satellite too, but we recently did some improvements because the power kept cutting out. And I don't know why, because we didn't change anything, but we decided to split the electrical load to different circuits, and then we put the internet on a different line as well, so it's closer to the modem, and I think should be good.
Nothing getting in our way tonight.
Yeah, we're unstoppable.
right.
Ladies and gentlemen, for everything we've just gone through, the Jack Murphy dragging his sleigh through the snow to make it here, bare hands. Smash that like button, subscribe to the notification bell. But let's read this news here, man. Let's talk about Rand Paul claiming the election was in many ways stolen. Now, as all of you know, yes, let's not play games. We don't want to get the stream taken off the air. And YouTube has said that if you say certain things in combination, they'll just take down the clip.
What combos like Iraq, Saddam Hussein, weapons of mass destruction, Al-Qaeda?
That's okay.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, you can say that.
You can say those smashed up.
Yeah. You can lie to the American people at least and call for a repeated war, which gets us into this 20-year quagmire. And you can claim that Trump is a Russian asset still to this day, working for the Soviets, not just Russia, because they said 1987. All right, they said 1987, and you are okay. But if you claim two things, the first is that there's widespread voter fraud or error, and the second, you combine that with a statement that it changed the outcome, they remove your content. Boom, just gone from YouTube, which is really interesting considering a lot of what's coming out right now. And this statement from Rand Paul, which I will now read. The Hill reports, quote, "The fraud happened. The election in many ways was stolen, and the only way it will be fixed is by, in the future, reinforcing the laws," Paul said during a hearing with testimony from Christopher Krebs, the president's former cybersecurity chief, who was fired by Trump after he reported there was no interference in the election. Paul made the remarks as Krebs, wearing a mask, looked on skeptically, his arms crossed in front of his chest. Thanks for that, The Hill. The remarks were notable because Paul is seen as one of the senators who might join a bid by Rep. Mo Brooks to challenge the election's outcome and overturn the results in several states, despite a series of court decisions that have rejected claims of widespread fraud as unsubstantiated. That is false. Fake news from The Hill. Most of these cases, as far as I know, and it's challenging because there's many, were procedural grounds. In fact, I'll put it this way. Maybe that's true, but in the hearing, it was stated by numerous people that the claims in these lawsuits pertaining to fraud were never actually ruled on the merits. So they didn't say necessarily it was unsubstantiated that there was widespread fraud. They said things like you have no standing, or it's too late to sue, or, this is a criminal matter that must be investigated and not for a civil court or whatever. I'll also point out Chris Krebs, who said there was no interference. He said specifically from a security perspective, because he's a cybersecurity guy. He said fraud, well, that's a criminal matter I have nothing to do with. So that's really important when we're talking about this. Now, I don't know if Rand Paul actually will step up, especially, I don't know if you heard Jack, Mitch McConnell basically saying, leave Trump high and dry, don't do this.
I don't think we can count on the GOP for support in this matter, as much as I would like to. I'm curious about Rand Paul going out on a limb here. What do you mean? He's always sort of been a renegade, right? And doing his own thing. And, he's really making kind of a stand here. Him and Ted Cruz have really stepped up, taken some action to try to, investigate it, at least see what's happening. Yeah. And take a principled stand. I guess Rand's comfortable out there by himself, huh?
He's always been. What did he filibuster the NDA, yes. the defense bill? Yeah. That's supportive of Trump. Trump says he's going to veto it. I don't know if he can because Republicans and Democrats are like, war good, more war, fantastic. We don't care what Trump thinks.
Ted Cruz started smoking pot like 6 years ago.
Is that true? What?
I don't know. It just seems like he started smoking pot. He totally changed. He used to be this uptight nerd, and then he started growing a beard. Now he's like this hippie Republican.
I mean, something did happen.
I have no other explanation.
Yeah, I don't know.
He took mushrooms or something.
Well, come January 6th, we're going to find out. I'm willing to bet the Republicans with absolutely zero political willpower are going to sit back and be like, but I don't want to do what he wants.
Dude, Rand Paul is not a Republican. Like, he's a Republican, but he's not anything like Mitch McConnell. Like, he's a completely different creature. Like,
yeah, he is.
Maybe he's like a libertarian.
He is very libertarian,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's a lot like his dad.
But because the Libertarian Party has no representation in our government,
they run as Republicans.
It's why Bernie runs as a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the interesting thing about the progressive left is that Bernie, when it became obvious that he wasn't going to win, or I should say that when he folded because he should have kept pushing it, he just dropped down and started licking the feet of the DNC establishment, where Trump was like, no, excuse me, no, and then he took over. And then the Republicans, it was inverted. It's interesting. Bernie and the progressives were forced to drop down and beg the establishment for some kind of time and presence, and they barely get any leverage. Trump was the other way around. Trump took over, and the establishment Republicans were like, oh no, what do we do? You're the Trump party now, baby. So they had to listen to what Trump wanted, and they had to get behind Trump to the best, to a certain extent. And it's really funny how many Trump supporters really did say okay to the Republicans. And now things are getting totally different. I mean, first of all, I'll tell you, when I see memes from Trump supporters mocking police officers, I don't know if you saw this one, because you saw what happened in Michigan where the cop at the state capitol wouldn't let the Republican electoral candidates, in the building.
Yep.
So then all of a sudden, Trump supporters posting memes basically saying these cops are, not heroes. They only care about their paycheck and not the will, not the Constitution, stuff like that. So that sentiment's already changed. And now they're basically going nuts after Mitch McConnell, saying it's time for him to, for a new party leader.
I think it's definitely fair to say that the GOP is fractured and that the political realignment is happening right now in a very interesting way, where a lot of people who are anti-establishment are learning that they have a lot more in common than they have different from each other. But also, very interestingly, the Washington Examiner also just tweeted that in Nevada there are still legal arguments that, quote, 42,000 people voted more than once, that at least 1,500 dead people voted, and that 19,000 people voted even though they didn't live in Nevada. So we're still hearing some of these arguments. Will they actually translate and mean something?
That was stated under oath.
Yes.
By a Trump campaign lawyer.
Exactly.
So if they think there's no evidence and he's lying, congratulations. You got him. The Trump campaign lawyer is going to go to prison for lying to Senate under oath. Congratulations. There you go. So how about now we get his files, we present them in a court of law. That way you can all send the Trump campaign lawyer to jail. How does that sound?
Never will happen.
They don't want these guys going to court.
Of course
they don't want the merits presented.
Absolutely not. No discovery. None of that.
Yeah, when the Trump lawsuit, I think, was in Nevada, the judges didn't even, the court didn't even want to look at the evidence. They were like, no, we're not going to do that.
The Supreme Court, which is in favor of him, which was selected, there's a large number of people that were selected by him for the Supreme Court that were from the 2000 Bush v. Gore case. They're like, oh, we don't want to hear it as well. Or like what other writings on the wall do we need to see that there's a big rift within the establishment?
I don't get why the court gets to pick what they decide to look at. Like they work for us. So why don't we just give them what to look at?
They're an appellate court, not a trial court. So
they still work for the people, right?
But they're an appellate courts, right? So the way it works is you can file in court and have your trial, and then the judge issues their ruling. Congratulations, you're a citizen, you have that right. Now, appeals courts, they can reject you and say the law was upheld. So when the Supreme Court says we're not going to look at it, usually it's because they're like, this decision was legit. Bye. We're not going to bother with it. There you go.
Usually. But in this situation,
it was really different because Texas, the lawsuit from the states, it's called original jurisdiction, meaning who does a state go to when they're filing a lawsuit against another state? They can't go to a circuit court because a circuit might be in one of these states or totally unrelated. So they file with the Supreme Court. Alito and Thomas believe they're obligated to take up these claims to represent this, to oversee these disputes between the states. But apparently Trump's appointees, Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, and Kavanaugh, did not agree and felt that they have the right to say no to these cases. We'll see if anything comes of it. I think one of the important things people need to realize about whether or not the election was stolen or anything, right now we're well past the point of the election. I don't think at this point the election matters in any way. Right? The media said Joe Biden won. The Electoral College came and had their official votes, and they said Joe Biden. They voted for Joe Biden. Joe Biden gets the electoral votes. What we're talking about right now is Trump versus the establishment. Can Trump win in this ongoing fight? The numbers of votes don't matter as far as I'm concerned. Okay, you know why? We get a report out of Antrim in Michigan, where a guy straight up says these machines are designed to have massive errors. Like that was his assessment. And we had Hunter Avalon on the show, and he said, I don't believe it effectively. He said, this guy's a Trump supporter, and he's crazy, and he's put out false information before. And I'm like, great. That's exactly my point. The left is going to be like, why would I believe this report? It's from a Trump supporter. And I go, it's a great point. Why would I believe anyone who's not a Trump supporter when they come to refute it? In which case, all that really matters, confidence, legitimacy, and influence. Trump wins if more people believe in him than anything else. I don't know if that's going to happen, especially with people like Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell really, really hurting Trump's legitimacy, like seriously hurting it. When regular people are not paying attention and you get some crazy Kraken story, Hugo Chavez or whatever, I'm going to be like, what? I don't know. What is that? That sounds crazy to me. And so that hurts Trump's legitimacy. If they came out and made a constitutional argument about changing the rules, a regular person says, "Wow, that's interesting. Constitution. Oh yeah, violation of the Constitution. I understand that." Trump needs to convince more people, because right now I'll tell you this: if 100 million people woke up today, or tomorrow morning, and all said Trump is president, Trump would be president. Regardless of seriously, if everyone in this country just one day said the Constitution doesn't exist, then it wouldn't exist. Its power is held in the fact that people swear an oath to it, that we believe in the system. We have confidence the system exists, and that's what matters. So Trump is fighting a kind of battle to prove some kind of legitimacy. The reason it's going through the courts and the reason it's going to go to January 6th when they dispute is to use the system that exists now to assert legitimacy. That's it. But I'll tell you this. They say it's over. Betfair, right? They did political betting. I think they're based in the UK. Said December 14th, the Electoral College voted. Joe Biden has won the presidency. A bunch of Trump supporters got really mad. Started, tweeting at him saying, "What do you mean? It's like they haven't even counted the votes yet." And they're like, "Well, if you have a problem with it, we'll revisit later." The reason Betfair probably paid out is because they want to get their taxes in before the end of the year, their losses and their I guess the way you can put it is they take all this money for bets. And if they hold on to it into the next year, that's all revenue plus. So they need those losses. They need to be like, here's what we paid out and lost. We'll come back to it later if Trump somehow becomes president. It might even be Kamala Harris. I mean, look, Joe Biden was coughing up a storm. He's an old man.
And he announced he's going to be taking the COVID vaccine next week.
Oh, my God.
So, yes.
Anaphylaxis?
That's publicly announced.
I think he'll be fine. But
I'm not saying he won't. I'm just adding another layer to that. He's going to be doing that as well.
So what's happening is there's a system that exists. There are stamps on envelopes, certification, right? Official governor's seal. That's the kind of thing that a regular person looks at and says, "I recognize that as legitimate." But what if someone came to you with a seal that said, office of the new? What do we saw? We saw a lawsuit that went to that signed on for the Texas lawsuit. The Texas lawsuit got two amicus additions from New California and New Nevada.
Yeah, what was that?
States which do not exist.
Yeah.
But what if someone believed it? What if the media announced? What if every news outlet said, the state of New Nevada now exists and here's its territory? People would be like, wow, and they believe it. Then when someone sues, people would be like, it's a thing, right? So that's what the media has been relentlessly saying Joe Biden is president-elect, even though president-elect isn't determined until January 6th. They want him to be legitimized. Trump is fighting for legitimacy. The best path for Trump to get legitimacy is on January 6th at this point, and it's extremely unlikely. Maybe what happens is that some information comes out, from now until then, and then you have these Republican electoral candidates who cast their votes procedurally. So then, something flips, and then the count says, Republicans support Trump, Democrats support Biden. There's a dispute. It goes to Supreme Court or whatever. Who knows? Trump ends up winning, something like that. It's using the system's legitimacy to claim you are president. But I tell you, I think that, when they're saying it's over now, then they're saying, but on January 6th, we'll see Trump's final plan. It's like, it's not over election-wise until January 20th, when Joe Biden, swears an oath and he's sworn in to the Oval Office and all that stuff, and Trump leaves. What if Trump doesn't leave?
He will leave if he's supposed to.
Yeah.
I believe that 100%. What you bring up is something very interesting, though, is about what binds us. What binds us as people. And it's about shared imagined stories, right? It's just this thing in our imagination that we know somebody else believes. And so we believe the same imagined, order, the same story. And that's what makes our tribes. And so right now, everything is about who can be the fastest with the story and the narrative, who can flood the zone with the most information and the most stories that people can latch onto and believe are reality. And that's why the Stop the Steal guys keep going, and the protests keep going, and the never give up, no black pill people keep going. Because you're right, it is about just what people believe. That can shape reality.
That's how the U.S. dollar works.
This is
faith.
Historically a tortured existence for human beings. You know why? I was reading about the War for Independence, the Revolutionary War. And, back in the day, we talked about this before, when they signed the Declaration of Independence, there were drafts before they signed it. They signed it on July 2nd, I believe. And then the announcement was like July 4th, I guess. And that's when the final version came out or something. But it wasn't until, I think, what was the date? Was it October 29th, maybe? Can't remember. Where the king addressed Parliament for the first time after reading the Declaration. Months went by. with nothing happening. And then how long until they actually sent the British Expeditionary Force to the colonies to quell the rebellion? It probably was a year. Now, realistically, the Revolutionary War was already happening. It was happening, I think, for like 2 years before they signed the Declaration of Independence, because the colonies were already in revolt. So it had been going on for a long time. But this is what I was saying a long time ago. You'd be sitting on your farm or whatever, or you'd be working on someone's farm, whatever you did. And then, a postal rider would come and be like, we have a letter from the king. It's finally arrived after 3 months. And you read it and it says like, you suck. And you're like, oh yeah, well you suck. Send it back. And then 3 months later, the king gets it. A year goes by before any real action is taken. So you were living your life. You were eating food with your friends and your family, and you were working, enjoying yourself and in the sun. And all the political stuff was so stretched out. Once every other month, you'd have like some kind of political thing happen, and you'd be like, now it's every day, every minute, something changes. I wake up and there's like 10 stories of like crazy apocalyptic news revelations. Rand Paul, Mitch McConnell.
The DNI chief. It's overwhelming.
The DNI chief.
And this is why we had elections in Novembers and inaugurations in January, because it took people to travel so long across the country to get to Washington, D.C. and set everything up for themselves. But right now, there is a lot to say about this inundation of information, of data, and also who controls it, the algorithms that are set, and how they play on our emotions, feelings, and larger expansion of life, which has a huge detrimental effect, in my opinion. There's a lot to say about that. Sorry, I cut you off.
Well, the first thing was that we was back in the day, it took so long to get information that we actually needed people to represent us in politics. And now we don't.
Yeah.
I think we do.
No way, dude. You get all your information immediately. You can interact with anyone in the world immediately. You do not need other people to represent you anymore.
That's wrong. That's completely wrong.
I disagree with you.
Well, you're factually incorrect. That's factually
Tell me
incorrect.
how.
Because how much news do you read every day?
As much as I want.
As much as you want. Is it enough to know who Mykola Zlochevsky is?
That's a bizarre question.
No, it isn't. Why? When I'm talking about whether
is it enough? I don't know. You can always read more.
The answer is no, because some people's
but if I needed to know who he was, I would find out.
Some people's jobs is to collect and disseminate information. And I can't expect a plumber or a tradesman to know everything about what's going on in the world. They say, listen, bro, I can make the best aqueduct system you've ever seen in the world, and you would be envious of my skill. And I would say, you're totally correct. And they'd say, but you know what? I don't know who any of these guys are who are changing money, who are negotiating between these countries. I need someone who can be dedicated to that field of work.
They're allowed to give up their power if they want, but they should not be forced to give up their power.
Direct democracy doesn't work. It's chaos. It's mob rule. And a bunch of people who have no idea what's going on asserting rights and like their right to control and manipulate the system to a direct democracy degree.
No, we need a direct republic. I'm not talking about direct republic.
What is a direct republic?
Where a bunch of us in our district can vote, and then that becomes the yay or nay. We don't need to vote for someone to go say yay or nay for us.
Maybe.
The other thing I was thinking is that regarding the media, Joseph Goebbels, he was Hitler's minister of propaganda.
Yep.
His quote that if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, the people will eventually come to believe it. He went on to elaborate about lying, just continuously lying.
Let me tell you a story about
to create the myth.
Let me tell you a story about Reddit. When I think it was the Boston bombing, actually. Reddit was convinced that they had found the suspect, and they started posting photos and the name, and the community all got together and made their decree of who the bad guy really was, and they were wrong. And that's the problem with mob voting or mob rule, or
I remember being on the ground in Boston after that bombing happened. I drove up from New York City and just hearing all the fake news reports going around and seeing it translated with panic in the streets of saying, we got to look out, we got to fight for this guy, and people not knowing
I know
what
his
was
name.
going
I don't
on
want to say
there.
his name though, because he was innocent.
Yeah.
And so the concern is, I think representative constitutional republic is a good thing. I think the problem is we have corrupt representatives for the most part, almost all of them, except for a small handful. Mm-hmm. But when you have a bunch of people, like even a direct republic, it's an interesting concept because you'd still have the electoral college, you'd still have Congress per district and everything like that in different districts, all based on a certain number of people. So you'd still get senators, I suppose. I don't know how that actually would work with state representation. I guess you'd still have to have senators.
Well, no, you wouldn't, because how many representatives are there? 400 now, or so, however many. let's pick a number, 500 dudes,
535
people representing 535 areas. Now, instead of that person saying yay or nay for that area, those people would do a mass vote, and then that area would produce a yay or nay vote of the other 534. And then each area would give their 535th.
So what ends up happening is what we're supposed to have is a politician who understands the policies, who visits the areas and understands the needs of each area and says, if one group comes to me and says fracking is wrong and destroying the environment, we must ban it. And another group comes to me and says fracking is good, it's the lifeblood of Western Pennsylvania, we would die without it. The politician has to then make the hard decision. It's a good point. There's a lot of concerns about fracking, but I think many of these people may be incorrect, and I can't take away the livelihoods of people who are impoverished and not making that much money. So we're going to have to make sure we have some kind of compromise, but fracking will stand. What would happen if you did a referendum on fracking in Pennsylvania? The people in the cities would outvote the rural areas, shutting it down and destroying all of their lives because they don't know anything about that area. They don't live there and they've never visited it. But when you get different districts, and when you have districts, the districts vote for their interests. So that would make sense. But when you have senators, those are the people who are supposed to go around the state and understand the full issues. And they try to pander to each and every group to find that right balance of lowest common denominator, maximum vote. The problem is parties on the ballot. I think this is a big thing. We can solve a lot of these problems. We were talking about this the other day. I don't know if you heard us, Jack. We were saying take political parties off ballots. When you go to vote, there's no political parties. You'll just see names. Good luck. If you don't know who the person is, don't vote for him. But right now people go in and they go D or R. D. R. And that's all they're voting for. Get rid of the political parties. Just vote for the person. If you don't know who the person is, well, then don't vote for him. That's your problem.
People want to vote for a platform, though. They want to know sort of what the big picture is. They want to know what the worldview is. They don't want to just...
I disagree.
Yeah.
People who vote for Democrat aren't voting because of what they think the platform is or whatever. They're just like Democrat good, Republican bad, or Republican good, Democrat bad. Like, the story we brought up again, the trans Satanist anarchist who ran as a Republican in the primary and won in, I think it was in New Hampshire, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
Because
I know
people
the
went
person,
in
yeah.
and they looked at the ballot and they were like, Republican. And then they got really mad when they found out who they voted for. That's your problem.
But what we're just talking about right now is the fact that most people are rationally low information.
Yes.
And so if you get to the ballot, there's a little bit of information that can help you. You're talking about putting people who are low information rationally into an even lower information position.
Yeah.
But how does putting Democrat or Republican help anyone? It's hurt them. It's hurt them because now you get Democrats who don't have to actually do anything. They just get elected and then they do nothing. So you know what would really help them? If they don't know the names of these people and so they vote randomly, it cancels everything out. It says random then. But if they go in and they say, well, I know I want to vote for Trump or whatever, I don't know about the rest of these people, then Trump gets the vote and they don't vote for other people.
Yeah.
And then the people who get in are the ones that people actually wanted and supported.
I think we're all talking about the same thing, and that's low information voters. And the problem is people aren't informed, they're programmed. And whether it's, schools, the mainstream media, Hollywood, and more than ever, social media, we are seeing the programming of individuals to think a certain way and to have their limited point of view be projected in their small little echo chambers, which prevails on social media more than ever, that reinforces people's beliefs rather than having them open-minded, rather than have them thinking. And I think if we could just get individuals thinking or open-minded or set up the cultural institutions or culture crash in some ways to allow people to see that there's different perspectives, there's different ideas, there's different options out there, that I think naturally human beings would go towards those options and then go towards a better path than the crappy path that we are on right now.
I think this is one of the most important issues facing the country today. I think that is a skill that we need to teach people. We call it, in the liminal order, we call that personal sovereignty.
Yeah.
And we talk about how Jordan Peterson often said that people don't have ideas, but ideas have people.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We want to train our guys to be people who identify their own beliefs and are strong enough mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and integrated in that capacity so that they can embody those values and make a choice to live like that, a deliberate, conscious choice in your belief system. Because right now, there's a battlefield in your brain, and the first mover is often the one who wins, and you don't even know it.
Let's be honest. When a person is born, they're thrown into the system, and the system chews them up and spits them out, uses and abuses them to the highest level, kids are told, go get a degree, go get a loan, go be in servitude for the rest of your life, paying off something that you can't legitimately pay off unless you're a slave to the cog of a machine that, of course, ruins any form of logical, real, sovereign, individual existence. So I think that right there is the essential key. But how do we unravel that? How do we fix that? Because I see a lot of institutions. I see schools, mainstream media, Hollywood, social media, all reinforcing the establishment line, all reinforcing the doctrine that puts them on this machine that a lot of people don't know how to escape. How do we do that?
It starts at home, and it starts with parents, and it starts with fathers leading their families and teaching their kids. These are life skills, teach you how to hunt, teach you how to balance a checkbook, teach you how to be a sense maker, and how to be personally sovereign, and so you can choose your own ideas and make your own selection. But this is an investment, right? This is an investment, and the reason why the investment makes more sense now than it may have in the past is because the stakes are higher. The stakes are higher. We're not just simply two gentlemen disagreeing over the size of the budget or this or that. We have a fundamental difference in the way that we think the world and the country should be arranged. Different notions of justice, different notions of right and wrong, different notions of truth.
Yep.
And so we need the stakes are higher. So the rationally ignorant or had by an idea sort of selection, the calculus is changing on that.
Well, dumb people and low IQ people are getting abused more than ever. And I think it's in everyone's kind of best interest that doesn't happen, because it hurts everyone on the larger kind of spectrum here. And that's why I've been always talking about homeschooling. New Hampshire has one of the biggest homeschooling networks. It also has some of the highest IQs in all of the United States, which shows you that, I think it's critically essential to get away from all these institutions. Public schooling is one of them. Homeschooling is a big thing. I always followed Dana Martin. She's a great, amazing speaker and a major proponent of homeschooling. So if you guys are looking into potentially getting into that, definitely probably check out Dana Martin. And, especially if you have a young child coming on the way. I would never, ever want my kid to go through a public school system that I went through in New York City, because it was absolutely horrifying.
So right now, you have there's actually a really, really funny meme I saw. I'll start over. It was the bell curve, and on the back it was a really, really stupid looking, like, drooling person that said Trump won. In the middle is the average, and it says Biden won, and at the end it's the big brained glasses wearing guy saying Trump won. And the way I look at that is not necessarily that it's correct, but on the right, you certainly have a lot of dumb people who support Trump, but then you have a lot of smart people, and you can look at not necessarily everyone who's like intellectual dark web types, but like moderate, disaffected liberals, former Democrats, people who are consciously looking at what's going on and saying, I'm going to make a decision. This is not the right choice. This is. So certainly you still have your left and right tribalists, your Democrats, your Republicans. But in the traditional political system, it was just the exploitation of the low information voter from both parties. But now with Trump and with Bernie, to a certain degree, you have more active individuals. Unfortunately, I think the left has fake progressive grifters in high profile positions who claim to represent the left, but really don't. I'm not going to say who they are, but they're very prominent. And then on the right, you have people who will probably be accused of the same thing, but more nuanced discussions, more debate, and an actual interest in intellectual honesty. And I'll give you a really good example. It was Ken Bone. I mean, you guys remember Ken Bone?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Everyone loved him. It was the red sweatshirt guy in the 2016 election. He tweeted that he was going to be voting for, I think, Joe Jorgensen. Was that what was happening? Yes. And he said, amazingly, all the Trump supporters were like, stand up for what you believe in, man. We respect you. Good for you. And the left were screaming in his face, you're voting for Trump. You know my favorite thing is? When people would say, when they would be like, if you don't vote for Biden, you're essentially voting for Trump. And then you'd hear, if you don't vote for Trump, you're essentially voting for Biden. So then my friends who like voted third party were like, I guess I voted twice because somehow I voted for both.
Voter fraud.
Yeah. Because if one, there you go.
I think that's an underappreciated phenomenon is the intellectual wing of the MAGA movement. Yeah. I think there's a lot of very thoughtful people that are analyzing the academic and philosophical trends, and that they're really taking a principled stance. Somebody like James Lindsay is a guy who went through a very public experience of coming to grips and understanding that in order to stand up for what he believed was right, he needed to get in with MAGA. And there's a lot of people on that edge, that you keep thinking are going to break this way, are going to finally see, or, guys like Andrew Sullivan or Eric Weinstein and those guys, you think that they're just on the cusp, but they're not. They're just nowhere near. Sullivan just disappoints me all the time at this point. I used to really like that guy 15, 20 years ago. I used to really
Sam
like
Harris.
Him a lot. Yeah.
It's so crazy that Sam Harris is famous for his articulate assessment of radical Islam. And he sits on Bill Maher with Ben Affleck, and he's like, when we look at the concentric circles, you can see that 51 million people. He's explaining how like there are illiberal beliefs among this religion, and I think it's a fair point. Many religions have illiberal beliefs within them. But then Ben Affleck just snaps, and he's like, it's racist. Blah. And then Sam Harris is like, well, I disagree. Why can't we have a rational discussion? And then the Trump supporter saying, figuratively now, this didn't really happen. A Trump supporter says, you're right, Sam Harris. Let's have a conversation about Trump. Well, Trump is awful. He's a racist. It's like, you're supposed to be smart, dude.
Right.
You're supposed to be calm and rational.
Right.
Instead, he tweets all this ridiculous, nonsense about Trump. So anyway, back to the point. The Democrats, I can prove with one simple fact. They survive only on the low information voter.
Dude.
And do you know what that fact is?
What?
They pushed for 16-year-olds to vote.
Yes.
That's it. Listen, you can argue that 16-year-olds should have the right to vote, fine, but you're not going to tell me that a 16-year-old is a high information voter. There may be a small group of, what did Jen call them, indigo children, who are just gifted and know, and they're prodigies. They exist. Very, very smart young people. But politics, there's so much you have to learn and experience through life to truly empathize and understand. It's possible to be a very smart young person and have understood that. Maybe, you spent your formative years working and traveling, so you got a bigger dose of reality than the average person. A lot of these kids grow up institutionalized and never see the world. Even after they're 22, graduate from college, they still never left their hometown.
Yeah, so many of the kids in this country haven't left the 6 square block radius of their house or their apartment in the city that they live in.
And the Democrats' plan is we should get them to vote. Why? Yep. Because low information voters are dancing behind the Pied Piper as they lead them to the ocean. They're going, we'll give you all this free stuff. Come. You know what I always thought? It was really funny.
Did he just call them rats?
What? Yeah, kind of.
I think he did.
Sure, I guess. It was an analogy. I wasn't trying to insult them. I wasn't trying to insult them as rats. I was trying to insult
them as
low intelligence.
Right, yeah.
So, but listen.
Lemmings.
When I was younger, I thought about something interesting because I met a lot of people who would tell me that they were, Republicans because they were fiscally conservative, but they didn't agree with Republicans on social issues. And I'm like, right, this is kind of like the libertarians were, right? But then I thought about a lot of the arguments about personal responsibility and the Democrats' arguments for welfare benefits, free healthcare, free college, free this, free that. And I'm like, man, it really does sound like you've got two parents and your dad is saying, look, son, if you want to buy candy, you got to go work to get the money to buy the candy with. And the mom's going, just give him the candy, dear. It's okay, honey. And then gives the candy. Which one is the kid going to pick? Free candy.
Yeah, but, you make an interesting comparison there. In raising a child, having a mom who's going to coddle you and give you stuff and a dad that's going to tell you to take risks and tough love, that's a great combination.
It is. Yeah.
That produces a healthy child.
But not a
produce
healthy
a healthy nation.
But that's becoming rarer and rarer. And then we have a lot of people being shipped in to be the nannies. And the nannies are like, let's just put the kid in front of the TV or give him a screen. And as you said, kids sometimes don't even leave the 6 block radius. I would say their eyes don't even leave the screen for more than the entire day that they're up and awake.
I just got a really good idea for a skit. It's 2 politicians. One politician is, he's like, he's not wearing a tie. It's, it's unbuttoned. He's really relaxed. His sleeves, are folded up or whatever. And he's like, listen, we're going to get this country back on track, but it's going to take hard work from all of us. And we're going to pitch in. We're going to strengthen our community. And together we will lead this nation anew. Crickets. And then it goes to the next guy and he's dangling keys. And they're all going, yeah, they're cheering and clapping and celebrating. And then it's like landslide and it's a picture of him holding keys and dangling.
I think that's a meme that you're describing there that I saw a couple times. But again, if you're paying attention, I'm seeing a lot of people who are in politics, who are in social commentary, becoming more and more worried. Because it definitely seems like the low information voters, the disenfranchised, the angry are becoming bigger and bigger. I don't know if that's just something that we're seeing because of the social media lens that we have, but it definitely seems like there are more people who are not in the know than the people who are in the know.
Well, it used to be that the people were, I hate this low information voter. It's insulting. I like the phrase rationally ignorant, right? The rationally ignorant used to just be that, rationally ignorant, but now through casual interaction through social media, they're not just rationally ignorant. Now they're just like accidentally, what's the word when you become an ideology where you
Ideologue.
You become an accidental ideologue, right? Just through incidental contact on social media. They were rationally ignorant. But now because they were posting, pictures of what they had for lunch and talking to their grandma, now they're also getting this incidental radicalization.
They're taught to be experts in everything.
Right. They are being abused.
Yes.
Yes, they are.
With the R and the D on the voting ballots. They're being manipulated to vote for what a feeling that they have, that if a Democrat, they picture blue, they picture certain things. And so they're being abused into being brainwashed into that, to put into that.
They're voting straight party.
Yeah, that's
And
like a form of abuse
people.
against someone's sub-intellect. If they don't, if they're ignorant.
We communicate subvocally. We communicate through colors. We communicate through images. We communicate through associations and consistency. This doesn't bother me, having the parties on the ballot, and I find it as a useful conduit
but like
for information.
If you see Ron or Rand Paul and you're like, I love that guy, therefore I must vote for Republicans, and then you want to put something like Mitch McConnell into office.
Yeah,
like,
right.
What have I done? So I think it's real a mind screw to trick people into voting a certain way.
Well, that's the whole thing. There's a reason why they made the president minimum age 35, right? Why can we vote for the guy under 35? As I'm getting older and crankier and get off my lawner, I'm thinking, we should be raising the voting age, and with skin in the game. But now I don't want to get too crazy.
Well,
this is
that's what I said yesterday. I said that yesterday.
Yeah.
A couple of things we've seen over the past couple hundred years is that we've eroded the nature of the republic closer towards federalization and direct democracy. That's been a onward trend, a big trend. So I think that has sort of changed the shape of what this country is. It used to be that the states would appoint electors. It used to be that the states would appoint senators. And then we've slowly changed all the rules to be like popular vote, popular vote, popular vote. And now they're trying to do it once again. National popular vote.
Should we, if we believe in the founding, we believe in the original principles of the country, we believe in the Constitution and all that, as a thought example, if we brought the founding fathers back today, coached them up on what was going on, shouldn't we just do what we think that they would say, what they would do? What would their reaction be?
No,
Why not?
Sometimes,
I don't think so.
yeah.
Because they lived in extremely different times, and the ideas of classical liberalism to them were relatively new, and there were a lot of mistakes that they made. In fact, the Declaration of Independence disparages the Native Americans as partly the reason they wanted independence was the Crown was like using Native Americans against them, and it's like there's a lot of things
True.
we've changed our views on.
Yeah.
But the general concept of individualism, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they would look at the Constitution and be like, how many amendments? Wow, that's fantastic. Because they negotiated, I think, the Bill of Rights, several years after the Constitution. And the Constitution was actually several years after the Articles of Confederation. So it wasn't, the Declaration of Independence happened, and then it was like almost, a decade later? They were
13 years before the Constitution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jefferson was really down on central banks. He didn't want central banks. And Washington didn't like political parties. Like that, I think they were spot on about.
Yeah.
Well, Washington believed in term limits, which should be implemented, I think, everywhere within the Senate and the Congress. And now we're living in a time where literally Hillary Clinton votes in the Electoral College and then says that we need to abolish the Electoral College immediately, just like she did a couple days ago, which is a little mind-boggling to say the least.
Monsters have taken over.
Yeah, imagine if we didn't have a democratic republic and it was just rule by the masses. I mean, you can only imagine.
I think we need a parliamentary hearing from the British courts to determine whether or not the vote from the founding fathers had any legal authority in the first place.
Here.
Right? Probably didn't.
So
we should retrograde to retrocede back to the United Kingdom.
Yes. So I'm joking, but
Just joking.
When I see these Republican electoral candidates cast their procedural votes and everybody says they're not official, they're illegitimate or whatever, I'm like, the founding fathers, I was reading about this, that like by what appointment or election did they become the representatives for the Continental Congress? Right. Like it's actually random. There was no uniform policy between different states as to who would go. And a lot of people felt they didn't actually represent the state at all because many people were loyalists and were like, we don't want a revolution. Stop. We don't want the violence. And in fact, there's really interesting writing about how what was going on, the conflict with the crown, was not worth it because too many people were dying and it was too much chaos, and it was better to just pay your taxes and shut up. A lot of what we see now from many of these Democrat cities, as the governors, pass these edict destroying everything, they're like, well, no, calm down. Actually, I'm sorry, that was wrong. I should say conservatives are doing that right now. Conservatives are the ones who are like, and I don't mean Trump supporters or all conservatives, but they're the ones who are just like, the Republicans who are saying we have to vote Republican for the Senate. Meanwhile, they won't actually fight for anything. The Democrats are screaming at the top of their lungs, nonstop demanding things, and they get it. And the Republicans are just sitting there going like, in a minute, and then sure, fine, you can have whatever you want. And they're not doing anything.
Yep.
So we're at that point.
And the governors just absolutely abuse their citizens. As I'm pulling up a story, I just looked at a story here randomly on Twitter of an incident where in New York City, police officers went undercover to order food in a restaurant, and then they arrested the restaurant owner after secretly, dressing up as normal citizens. And they walked in the business. Yes, this is a story. I could send it to you, Lydia, if you want right now. But this is in New York City, just another. The story just broke 40 minutes ago, but this is another just egregious example.
Tread on me.
Yeah.
All it does is tread.
I sent you the story,
All
Lydia.
it does is tread.
Yeah. What is the flag from the left? The fist crushing the snake saying, we will tread?
Yeah.
Congratulations, you elected these people.
They had a banner like that.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
It's the fist crushing the snake. And what's really funny, it's very similar to a Nazi propaganda of the fist squeezing the snake.
Would you be interested in starting a new political party, the MAGA party?
The MAGA party. I don't think I would want to start the MAGA party, but I certainly think that there are opportunities for new political organization. It's happened before. We've seen it happen in the United States. There's precedent. There's no reason why it couldn't happen today. I'm sure back then they said it shouldn't happen then either.
Trump supporters should just do it. You're not getting what you want from the Republican Party. The Republican Party has not going to fight for you, hasn't fought for you, and that's why Trump happened. Trump came about because the Republicans weren't serving the American people the way they wanted them to.
Indeed.
And so Trump gets elected. And now once these establishment cronies get their first chance, they're like,
here's the thing. A political party could change very, very quickly because what we're talking about is the MAGA network. The network is what launched Trump into office over the objections of all of the GOP establishment still to this day. And that network still exists, and that network still wants action. And with proper alignment, a plausible promise, that network's direction could be just pointed in a different way.
Yeah, and if you look at American history, political parties realign all the time and have throughout the beginning of the U.S. Constitution, and we are kind of seeing that happening right now, Definitely. Where a lot of the values of the left, and even in the year 2000, are becoming the values of the right, which is becoming anti-war, pro-free speech, which is something that we never thought would be something that Republicans would be kind of representing, or not even Republicans, people on the right, which I think is a more fair example of saying.
But here's the problem. When we have these guests on the show who are like in their 20s and they're Democrats who voted for Biden, they were children when Occupy Wall Street was happening. They were toddlers when George W. Bush was starting these wars. Yeah. They weren't alive, many of them, when 9/11 happened. Or they were babies or completely unaware.
That's why I brought 9/11 up yesterday.
So listen. Yeah. I was at Occupy Wall Street. Luke was at Occupy Wall Street. Ian, you were at Occupy Wall Street. We all sort of experienced this, and we're a bit older than these younger guys. We are now finding ourselves as like you, Jack, Democrat to deplorable. Me as milquetoast centrist, but I did vote for Trump because I think it was the right choice. And then these younger people who didn't experience the Obama administration to the full effects don't know anything about it. So the left is courting young people who are, I'm going to say it, low information. They don't know anything about this, and they're being exploited. Then the only alternative for people like us is we need an alternative, so we go to the Republicans. And that creates a cycle where the country always veers left, always. And it won't stop. That's a problem. There needs to be a point where we have principled conservatism that stays where it is, and then principled sort of more, I don't want to say leftism, but maybe social liberalism or some left-leaning policies, and a real negotiation on how far is too far in either direction. It doesn't happen. It's just always going to the left. The Republicans don't fight for anything. I don't know if you heard what Michael Malice said. He made a really good point. I keep bringing it up, but I have to. When Obama got his way and said you are legally obligated to buy health insurance or pay a fine, where were the Republicans to say, okay, and we'll negotiate there. We will absolutely give you your individual mandate, and we want one of our own. Everyone must buy a gun, otherwise pay a fine. Where is the inversion? Where is the other side of that argument?
The give and the take. Yeah.
There's none. It's Republicans going, we think you should slow down. And they say, no. And then the Republicans say, slow down. And then a year goes by and the Republicans are like, okay, fine, you can have it. Yeah. There's nothing resisting. So here we are. I grew up a punk rock skateboarder and voted for Trump. And you were a Democrat, voted for Trump. And why? Because they changed on social issues.
Yep,
I think that's fine, progress on social issues and civil liberties and stuff. But if it's changing the economic policy in a way that's destroying everything, we've got a serious problem. And that's what's basically happening. It's a constant quest for power where you have one side that demands it and takes it, and another side, the Republicans, who are just like basically holding a rope and being dragged along the way.
9 million people changed their vote from Obama to Trump in 2016. I wonder if that number grew significantly in this last election. It just doesn't seem to have been enough. Don't forget that he only won in 2016, 77,000 votes across 3 states, and just a handful of counties really made the difference.
How do you feel about a peaceful divorce?
I'm all for it. But I'm not. Let me just.
A lot of people are, man.
Let me just qualify this. I'm all for it in like a brainstorming session. We'd have to get into some real brass tacks to actually make it work.
Yeah.
But as I was driving up here today, I was thinking, how could we actually get a peaceful sorting? And one way I thought about doing that is maybe if we eliminate, and this is all pie in the sky nonsense, right? But maybe if we eliminate the federal income tax and you put all the social welfare stuff on the states. And then people can just vote. You'd be like, I want to live in a high tax, high social welfare state. And you go there and you pay your taxes. Everybody gets their social welfare.
It's great.
I want to live in a low state, low social welfare or low tax. Yeah. I'm going to go move there and really make it about money. And then let's just see what happens.
I mean, it kind of is that way.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, you could.
I mean, federal income tax is pretty big, dude.
Sure. I know. But you're basically saying cut taxes.
No, I'm saying like shift the structure around so that people can make choices within this structure right now.
But look, like we're going to buy a big old farmland in the middle of West Virginia.
Yeah.
Specifically because you can do things in West Virginia you can't do other places.
Yep.
You can just like point a gun and shoot it.
Yeah, I know.
I'm kidding.
But the federal income tax could also go up to 80%, and you're still living in West Virginia. And you're still in the United States of America.
And the anti-gun laws that Biden's going to be passing are going to be affecting everyone federally.
That's when I think we're dangerously close to the point where even liberals' brains are going to explode, because you can only sit back for so long. So listen, I want to pull up these stories. We got this story. This is the one Luke just mentioned. Undercover cops order food, then arrest bar owner for defying NYC indoor dining rules. Look at this smug, disgusting, despicable man, Cuomo. He literally killed 6,000 people by putting sick COVID patients in nursing homes. He is, in my opinion, a murderer who set policies forth that they should have known, that I can't imagine they didn't know. At the very least, fine. I'll tone it down a little bit. He's responsible for the negligent homicide of 6,000 elderly folks by putting COVID patients in these buildings. Now what is he doing? His police, oath breakers, New York police officers, arrested a bar owner for violating COVID restrictions after executing a sting in which they ordered food from the restaurant, AP reported. The New York City Sheriff's deputies entered Mac's Public House in Staten Island, New York, and ordered $40 worth of food and beverages, according to a sheriff's office press release. Congratulations, guys. You got them selling that food. That's contraband in New York City. The sheriff's officers are wannabe cops. Mark Fonte, a lawyer who represents the bar, told the Staten Island Advance. This is what happens when little people get a little power. Each one of them will have to answer to a federal judge. Oath breakers. Praetorian Guard for unconstitutional edict that was never passed. At a certain point, the state legislators stopped saying we're going to pass laws. And it's all relatively recent. Check this one out. This is probably the most insane thing I've seen in a long time. Did you hear this? Cuomo signs bill banning the sale of Confederate flags on New York state grounds and other hate symbols. Clearly, admittedly, according to Cuomo, in violation of the First Amendment. Probably New York's Constitution as well.
Doesn't care.
They just do it. And do the police care? Nah. So you know what? At this point, look, I moved out of these places. You got Antifa setting up their autonomous zones. Quite literally don't care.
Have it.
Have at it, bro. I don't care.
Have Portland.
And I'll tell you this.
Seattle, take it.
Give them New York.
When we saw these riots, I was very much like, dude, defunding and abolishing the police is stupid. You know why? Because You need, in a civilized society, and this is like a lot of intellectual dark webs, this is Brett Weinstein said, police need to be able to make arrests. Someone is going to commit a crime, and we need a system by which they can reasonably identify somebody, arrest them, and bring them in. And so we have these laws. It makes sense. I am not an anarchist. Luke, maybe you disagree. Michael Malice disagrees. But I think police, aside from a lot of the dumb stuff, the quotas, fines, or whatever, we need to be able to call a cop and say, you are the essential first layer of defense for when a crime is committed. I report it to you as an official, arbiter. You're neutral. You're not, in many cases. Then it goes to the courts, the DAs, and that's the process we have. I respect that in a lot of ways. But right now, I don't care anymore. I left these places because these cops have no allegiance to the law, to the Constitution. They are criminals at this point, well beyond my tolerance level. So let me just say one more thing. When Michael Mouse was on the show and he mentioned that in New York City, we have a constitutional right to bear arms, but these cops don't let him. They are criminals. And for me, that's not my threshold. I see his point. You know what? I kind of agree with him now. Now when I see this stuff, the cops arresting a dude for selling food, these people are despotic. They are psychopaths. And you know what, man? I just, if I was given the powers of the emperor, I'd be like, those officers' badges removed, pensions revoked, exile, away, gone. You are a criminal as far as I can tell. I won't lock them up, but get out of here.
Well, Tim, one thing you have to understand, these police officers are political. They're not apolitical. They're very political when they're following through on these decrees that haven't even been officially passed by the kind of rule of law that everyone accepts everyone to go by. There's even official case law where the New York City Police Department argued that they don't have to do anything. They don't have to help anyone during a moment of...
That was... You felt... you interviewed the guy.
Yeah.
The cops, watched a dude get stabbed.
Yes. There was a mass murderer running around. Joe Lozito, a guy who looked very similar to you. I don't know if you know about the story of Joe Lozito. Amazing human being. This random guy starts trying to kill people on the subway. He intervenes. He gets stabbed up. He takes him down. The police officers are literally standing there right next to him watching him as he's getting stabbed in his skull with a huge butcher knife, right? Then as he's subdued by Joe, as the police officers are literally watching the whole time, this whole altercation with guns, with batons, not doing anything, literally, they take Joe off, put the suspect in handcuffs, and they wait there for a long time. Joe wakes up in the hospital, almost lost his life. Was an inch away from losing his life because of the blood loss, because of the time it took the NYPD to figure out what was going on. The train was in the middle of the tracks, and they took him a very long time to get them to the next track to get Joe into an ambulance. He wakes up, and he has the mayor there congratulating these police officers who are deemed heroes of who saved the innocent people, and they called Joe an innocent person. Joe took the NYPD to court, one for libel, calling him a victim when he's the one that took down the perp with the knife, as the police officers were literally standing there. And the New York City Police Department argued and won successfully that they had no duty to help, serve, or protect anyone. And that's the case law on the books right now, that the police officers don't have to do or abide by any kind of decree to do anything for you.
You know what? These city cops lost all of my support. All of it. It was bad enough when I called out the 27 cops who were guarding the Black Lives Matter mural. It was illegally painted. It basically seized taxpayer dollars to paint a political slogan, to send a message to Trump, which was just insane and irresponsible. And these cops gleefully defended what was clearly illegal. They don't care. They're breaking their oath. And I said, of those cops, take their pension away. Strip them of everything and kick them out. Take their badges. And I want to see them. Look, you're done. You're gone. Get out. At this point, I don't live in these cities. Okay? I left. I was in the Philly suburbs. It was actually a fairly nice place. Our local department was really, really nice. And we're now essentially nearly to the point where we're officially moved away. And I was like, it's insane to say defund the police, because most police departments are not big city police departments. Big city police departments are big, massive, with huge budgets. Like New York's was like $6 billion. But most departments are not. And so you got to make sure you differentiate between what the left is saying when they say defund the police. Well, they're talking specifically about the big city cops, right? They're talking about the places where they vote for these people, these mayors. They vote for these politicians, these representatives and these governors. And then these cops get appointed. So your beef is where you live. And you know what I realized? I was like, it's a really good point. Why do I care if Antifa sets up an autonomous zone? I'm not going to go there. I don't live there. And the people who live there vote for the politicians and the DAs who allow it to happen. They must like it. So far be it from me to tell them the way they should live. If they voted for it and it's being allowed, more power to you, Antifa. Congratulations on your autonomous zone. You're not going to see any resistance from me. And I'll tell you this, the cops who are there and are fighting with them, I think those cops are in the wrong. You can't allow this to happen. The DAs, the people vote for it, and the cops try and go and shut it down. Nah, at this point, if you in Oregon as an officer, are going to shut down these businesses by edict and violate the rights of individuals, then why should I care if the people say this is allowed? If the DA says they're allowed to do it, then so
what
be
if
it.
someone set up an autonomous zone in your backyard?
That's different.
You call the cops?
In my backyard right now?
Yeah, on private property, on your property.
Probably not where we are, Ian, and the laws of this current location. I think if someone came onto my property,
I would not call the police.
It's a bit rhetorical.
Yeah.
You would
They're
call
probably
the
in
cops.
trouble.
99, you might shoot them to death, but ideally you would call the cops because someone's coming on private property. So that's what those people are doing.
Bro, we're in the middle of nowhere. It's pitch black outside. If people are lurking on my property, they're going to be in serious trouble. It's not like, look, when I lived on a farm in Miami, the only weapon we had was a .22 break barrel pellet rifle, because we were not gun people at the time, especially me. It was fun. We were just shooting targets in the backyard. And one day someone jumped the 6-foot fence surrounding our property on a 5-acre plot. And you call the cops. Congratulations, they'll be here in 40 minutes. So what do we do? Well, maybe it's not the smartest thing to have done, but I broke the barrel and dry fired it. Bang! And the person with the light ran back the way they came. Gone. If I called the police, they would have said, "Do you have a gun?" Well, then what do you want us to do? We can't get there for 40 minutes.
40 minutes.
Where we are right now, how long it would take? No. That's why we are armed, and that's why I'm out of Philly. I'm responsible for myself. If someone in Philly, one of my properties are doing something, I'd call the cops, and the cops would, in most instances, promptly remove them. And that's why I think I'm not blanket defund the police. Because that's something they'll do. They'll resolve the issue. When a guy tried breaking into my other house, the cops showed up literally in 1 minute. It was amazing. And the cop said to me, if it was me, I would answer the door with a shotgun. And I'm like, bro, we're in New Jersey. It's not that easy. It's not that hard, but
I have sympathy for the cops. I talk to a lot of cops in DC. I've got a lot of sources inside MPD, and they are always constantly telling me how opposed they are to Mayor Bowser, how opposed they are to the Black Lives Matter stuff on the street, how opposed they are to the sort of rules of engagement that they have and the restrictions that are put on them, and how difficult it is to check out riot gear, and all these things that make it even just harder for them to do their job, harder for them to be safe, etc. There's a constant conflict there. So, and the guys that staff the DC,
what are they doing about it, though?
Hold on. I hear you. The moment they go in undercover and arrest a guy for serving food is the moment I say, bye-bye. Yeah. I don't care what happens in your city. Totally. You guys are attacking innocent people at this point. You are harassing, you are degrading and berating and insulting and destroying the lives of regular people who are not hurting anybody. So you know what? You're on your own. But I don't care what New York does.
That's just a couple of guys. That could have been just a couple of, angry jerks.
Then I want to see all of the NYPD calling in a blue flu and saying this crossed the line, we won't enforce it.
And they won't do that.
They won't.
They'll
They
stand
won't
back while riots happen. They'll have the little slowdown as, of course, riots are hitting Fifth Avenue, and they won't do anything then, which they did, and leaving people helpless as, of course, people are just literally running down the street taking whatever they want. That's literally what happened. There was police officers during the riots in New York City that were on the same block just standing by, kicking rocks, not doing anything. Fox News was there 2 o'clock in the morning filming them, be like, I don't know what's going on. This huge shock on this Fox News reporter's face. I can't believe the cops are just standing there and these guys are just running into all these stores and taking whatever they want. What do you think was going to happen?
They did nothing during the riots.
Exactly.
And then the moment Cuomo says, by decree, your life is destroyed, the police went, with pleasure. Yeah, we're going to go beat the crap out of people. I'm going to
stick up for my DC MPD guys. I think it's different in New York. That's just the vibe that I get from the cops in DC and what I observe, I observe on the street and as a citizen in DC.
And that's what I was trying to say just a moment ago. Yeah. I'm not going to blanket my small town cops outside of the Philly area because they were really awesome. They did a great job. But when you look at New York City, why should I care?
Yeah.
They defunded the cops $1 billion. Good. I don't care. These cops They go undercover and sting a bar for serving food. But what about during the riots?
Terrible.
Yeah, just the worst possible. And so I look at Portland, and they got this new Red House Autonomous Zone. They're like booby traps and stuff, and I'm just like, you know what? At this point, why should I support any of these guys in these cities? They locked down Oregon. They shut down these businesses. And when the riots were going on, many of the cops, when they were told not to interact with the federal police, they said, okay. And they were like, we wish we could help. Bro, you're a human being. You can make a choice. Nothing's stopping you from making a choice. Imagine if, like, you look at any comic book hero. Look at the Marvel movie Civil War. Imagine if the heroes were all like, oh, gosh darn it, they told us we couldn't go and fight the bad guy. Oh, well, and they just didn't.
You know, you bring up a good point with your joke. It does take a superhero to resist, to say no to a direct order, to maybe perhaps violate who knows what they believe the law is, what their education level is on these decrees versus legislation, whatever. It takes a hero to stand alone in a circumstance like that. I'm not saying it justifies doing the sting.
Listen.
But I'm just saying, like, it does take a special.
But we should be honest about this. A lot of officers are self-serving. Yeah. A lot of officers, when they're given a choice, hey, do you want to have a paycheck for your family, or you want to not have a paycheck for your family? They're going to make the decision that's going to work out for them best. And this is why we have them doing absurd things like dressing up as undercover average civilians, and this is not the first time something like this has happened. There was undercover officers dressing up as homeless people so they could get people for
giving
speeding.
Money.
for giving money in some institutions and in some places, and also speeding.
One last pushback. Humans in every industry do things that hurt other humans. Yes. It's not just the cops.
But we should make people aware of that, because people are under this illusion that they're there to protect and serve. Get rid of that slogan and say, I am obeying my overlord. That's a more accurate statement.
Here's the simple way I'll break it down. When there are innocent people having their businesses destroyed who did nothing.
Yes.
I think the police do a good job when they stand up and they defend the city and they try to maintain order to the best of their abilities. It's a very difficult position to be in. And that's why I say when Antifa is calling for defunding the police while burning everything down, I'm like, y'all are nuts. But then what happens when, after you've said, thank you, officer, you did a good job, he says, shut your goddamn mouth, and cracks you in the mouth with a truncheon, and then he personally throws the brick through your window. Now I'm like, bro, you're Antifa. These cops going to a guy's business and shutting it down, that's exactly what Antifa was doing that I was complaining about. The problem is when an individual, regardless of who they are, where they align, destroy the livelihood of the innocent. And the cops are doing that now, so as far as I'm concerned, they're mud. In New York City, sorry. They're the same thing as Antifa was going around rioting. The cops are doing the same thing now. So who do we get? The feds? Is Trump going to send in somebody? He should. He probably could, but he's not going to do anything like that, and he hasn't done anything like that. And who else is going to do it? Nobody. So listen, I want to reference this one more time. Cuomo banned the sale of Confederate flags, clearly in violation of the Constitution. I don't like the Confederate flag. I don't care for that stuff. But how are you going to be like that Constitution thing? Screw off. I don't care. We're going to pass the law. And then there's that viral video, I think it was out of California, where you had it was a Nick's Greek, I think it was. Yes. And the health inspector, the door was open. They're like, your door is open, so that's all that matters. You're getting a fine. That's just the law, sir. And he goes, what law? No law was ever passed. There was no vote. There was nothing. It was just edict from some guy. We don't care, sir. These people are psychopaths. Yeah. And we are in serious trouble because we're at a point now where there's no cohesive culture, where people are like, we are a nation of laws and we abide by the Constitution. We're now a nation of people being like, I don't know, just, I was told to do it.
Yep, and the bureaucrats that were enforcing these laws that you were specifically mentioning at that restaurant were even screamed at by average civilians walking by saying, why aren't you at Costco? Why aren't you at Walmart? Why are the big multinational corporations allowed to exist? Meanwhile, small independent businesses are getting squashed out as these plutocrats are literally obsessing about a great reset and the redefinition of capitalism that, of course, will empower them with even more authority, more regulations, more rules, and more bullcrap that will only happen because these officers are deciding to choose to listen to someone like Andrew Cuomo. And if they decided to have a backbone, some of them are. There's a few sheriffs in New York that decided and said no. And of course, what did Andrew Cuomo did? What did he said? He said that they're dictators because they're choosing not to follow his own decrees. And this is the person, by the way, that was also seriously accused of abusing a female counterpart, which again, a lot of people in the mainstream media aren't talking about, especially CNN, MSNBC. But most importantly, Joe Biden is considering this man that just banned the Confederate flag. Like in New York, we have so many problems. We have so many issues we have to deal with. But this man's main objective is to ban a symbol that no one really cares about in New York anyway, that does nothing, just virtual signal to people how much of an authoritarian he is. This man might be the next Attorney General of the United States. Imagine the chaos, the pain and suffering that he will cause when he has more power underneath him and more willing servants, more obeyers that, of course, will follow out every one of his orders without even thinking about it.
Andrew Cuomo instructed sick COVID patients into nursing homes, killing about 6,000.
Meanwhile, there was hospitals all over New York City. There was
the Javits Center was empty.
We had a whole huge naval ship brought in that was an entire hospital. Central Park, field hospitals.
They didn't use it.
Nothing. And then sick elderly patients sent back to nursing homes.
This is why I will say, in my opinion, the only explanation is that Cuomo did it on purpose. He was laughing and smiling, and he said, "We got COVID patients, put them in the nursing homes." But, sir, the Javits Center is only at 30% capacity. I said, put them in the nursing homes. Yes, sir, I'll do whatever you say because I'm a bootlicker.
Dude, he's a...
The son of a gun won an Emmy. He won an Emmy for his work regarding COVID, and then wrote a book. And then he wrote a book, self-congratulating himself about what a great job he did. Meanwhile, he had the highest death record than I think anywhere else in the United States.
Yeah.
Are you freaking kidding me? And this is going to be the next Attorney General of the United States?
Who's the girl?
What do you mean?
What do you mean? That's
just trying to put it
Biden's
out there. I
number
don't want
one.
him to be.
That's the number one candidate
Dude,
for
he's
Joe
got
Biden
the job
right now.
because daddy. Because Mario Cuomo, he's got the name. He's got a frown on his face.
how do you
and a
think-
nice
Let's
famous
slow down a second. Let's slow down a second. Jack.
Yes.
You saw what the Proud Boys were doing
In D.C.
in D.C.
last weekend.
Looked a whole lot like Antifa to me.
Oh, so we're going to start off like that, are we, Tim?
Yeah.
Are we?
So
I'm not a Proud Boy, and I'm not a proud here to carry any water for them whatsoever.
But I
how do you
saw
want to
them.
talk about it?
I saw them tearing down banners,
Yeah.
lighting them on fire,
Yeah.
and I've seen Antifa stealing flags and lighting them on fire.
Yeah.
And I think stealing someone's private property and destroying it is wrong.
Okay.
I think if you want to have a symbol of your political belief, you're allowed to do it. We have to respect these boundaries.
I agree with almost everything of what you said there, except for the last one.
But hold on. The point of this is not for me to rag on the Proud Boys. This is actually me defending the Proud Boys.
Okay.
When they do, which is not even as bad as Antifa, because Antifa attacks innocent, regular people and threatens innocent, regular people. Now, it was wrong because the churches that the Proud Boys ripped the banners off of were innocent, but it's not to the same scale of Antifa, chasing people down the street and beating them. The Proud Boys are facing hate crime charges.
Hate crime charges.
Possible. And wasn't it the Proud Boys they were the ones who got stabbed?
Proud Boys got stabbed. Yes.
Critical
Three
condition.
Three of them got stabbed in an altercation. It's unclear as to who provoked the altercation in the first
And
place.
the Daily
just put it this
Mail
way.
admitted the knife from the photo.
Right.
They covered
that
it.
they
They
showed.
totally covered it up.
Yeah.
So listen, here's the first point I want to make, starting this off, and then we'll carry on. The reason I bring this up in the context of our previous conversation.
Yes, sir.
Antifa can go around and doing it for years.
Yes.
The Proud Boys go and do something not even to the same degree, but similar, and immediately the cops are like, hate crime, investigation, we're taking these guys down.
Okay, so I have guys on the inside of MPD. We've been talking about this. They've been talking to me. I've been on this story, thinking about it. And first things first is if you burn a Black Lives Matter banner, that's not a crime, right? If you print up a sign that looks exactly like all the other signs and you take it out in the street and you burn it, no problem. If you find a Black Lives Matter banner on the ground and you pick it up and you burn it, no problem. If you happen to be in possession of it and you burn it, no problem. The only time that it's a problem is if you steal it.
Yes.
Right. And so I don't know that there was they don't have any direct video evidence. Maybe they weren't actually saying that there was confirmed theft first. So theft needs to come before destruction of private property, and then you have to have like hateful intent and bias and whatever. So what happens is they saw the crime of the burning, they wanted to prosecute it. It goes to the Twitter handle. It's the police Twitter handle is the one that decides how to characterize it. So I'm sure that's a political decision, right? And then once it's characterized as a hate or bias crime, then it goes to some sort of liaison unit whose job it is for them to go and investigate. And I have a feeling it will get lost somewhere in there. First of all, they haven't been able to confirm or convict that they were theft in the first place, and it's totally perfectly legal to take a Black Lives Matter banner, burn it, whatever. Now,
so a lot of these guys that were surrounding it, there's no crime for them because as far as they knew, someone had a banner and they burned it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. The only time it would be a crime is if somebody was witnessed and saw them and it was confirmed that they stole it from another. Even though it has the church's logo on it, if they found it on the street and burned it, still not a crime.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, you're right about the hate crime. It's like Black Lives Matter is such an exquisitely crafted phrase that it is at once a political movement, it's at once a statement of some sort of fact, and it's at once something that tugs on your heartstrings about being a racist or not. But the truth is it means different things to different people. When the church puts it up on there, I'm sure they really mean like Black Lives Matter. We should just let's not have black people die.
It's a church. Yeah. It's a church.
That doesn't mean that they're going to be acting in the right way all the time. Of course, any religious organization, that's not justification for them. But it is clearly a political movement.
Right.
It's clearly has funding with billions of dollars, and they have initiatives, and they have a platform.
$10.6 billion.
$10.6 billion. Yeah. And the juicy, delicious part is watching the BLM groups fight about that money. There's a big
billion
dollars.
Yep.
Lydia found that one.
There's a schism. There's a schism in the BLM chapters with the national and whatever. They're fighting over the money. And it just cracks me up to see them just going down the normal route. But it's not a hate crime to burn a donkey or an elephant or even the flag.
The reason I bring this up is, for one, yes, I want to be critical of what the Proud Boys did to a certain degree, but also defend them in the sense that if the DAs allow this, if the media allows this for Antifa, then how could they come out with this double standard? It just shows you the media clearly doesn't represent the people. It's all ideological. And that brings me back to some of the earlier stuff we were talking about. The election, the numbers, none of it matters. It just matters what people choose to believe and what to fight for.
Yep.
So when I look at these, I'll be more general so I don't single anybody out. There are too many instances where conservatives were, say, defying lockdown and getting arrested, and they were complying and not resisting. And there are too many instances where the left literally beat the cops and then get their charges dropped.
Yeah.
That's how extreme the disparity is between the left and the right.
Yeah.
That Antifa for this whole year, you know that Chaz, this is amazing, I learned this today. You know Chaz was never cleared out? We thought the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone was gone, right? No. They stayed in the Cal Anderson Park until now, with tents, with barricades and everything. I did not know that.
Nobody cared.
Because the city said we got rid of it, and the main area, the streets were opened up, but the park itself remained occupied by these far leftists, and it just sort of disappeared. That was going on forever. And in the meantime, we've had many stories of people defying lockdown, and the NYPD shows up and arrests them. How incredible is that? That the far left can riot, they can destroy things, I'll tell you this. We got a story where a guy has a business. It was called Rio's Ribs, and the neighboring building was burnt down. It caused damage to like the greater structure, I guess, or to the neighboring buildings. And so he gave an interview where he was disparaging the rioters. So the next day, on surveillance, on security footage, you can watch this. They released the video just the other day. A guy burns the man's business to the ground. Don't you dare speak up against us, says this lunatic. And so they threw burning trash. And then he opens the gate to go back in and look and make sure the fire's catching. And that's what happens with the far left. And then what do we see? The district attorneys in these places cut them loose. Well, okay, you know what? That's why I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't care about your city.
The arsonist's face was blurred.
In the
actual news report, I'm like, who are they protecting? Like, are they trying to catch this person? Do they want to know who actually did this? Who's actually burning down people's buildings for political reasons?
In these places, the far left is protected. They can literally burn it down, and the media's like, cover their face because we don't want to get murdered.
And then we have to understand, George Soros is financing a lot of these attorney generals and going into local towns and smaller cities and saying, you know what, we're going to give millions of dollars.
Let's be specific. What is it called? The Open Society Foundation?
Yes.
Yeah.
provides grants to nonprofits who then fund.
And they
politicians.
financed a lot of different ones that are creating and sowing havoc in big cities like San Francisco. The San Francisco Attorney General is now the Los Angeles Attorney General, and that's why a lot of people are saying what we saw in San Francisco with that entire mess. I remember even a few months ago walking down the street in San Francisco covering the utter madness. I was doing a random walk and talk video, and I literally saw a woman screaming, police officers hearing it and walking the other direction. There was crap. People
I watched
crap.
the lady.
Yeah,
I watched the lady walk into the middle of the street, and she was like big fat lady, and just drop trow right there in the middle of the street, just go at it. And I was like, whoa, dude.
Yeah, I wasn't even looking for it. I was literally at the Capitol, and you just see a whole bunch of people all around it shooting up, urinating, crapping, and just totally out of it. It seems like a zombie world out there. And this is because of these attorney generals. Now Los Angeles has the same attorney general as they did in San Francisco. Same guy supported by Soros, and a lot of people are expecting the same thing to happen as he's making the similar kind of protocols.
Let me tie these ideas together real quick. When I see Antifa now start acting a fool, targeting innocent businesses, I'll be mad. But if I see far leftists setting up autonomous zones, don't care. Because I see these cops abusing regular people and attacking the innocent. Not all cops, but in these places. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you this. There's a meme that goes around from the left. They say, it's really funny. If you have 1,300 good cops and you have 1,312 cops, 1,300 are really good people who stand by the law and the Constitution, but 12 of them are criminals who keep breaking the law, and that 1,300 doesn't say anything to stop the criminals, then you have 1,312 bad cops. That's the meme. You know why? 1312, ACAB, all cops are bad. I don't agree with that, but in New York City specifically, if these cops know it's happening and they keep doing that job without protest, without standing up to defend the people of that city, then I think they're not cops. It's the Praetorian Guard for the emperor, for the Empire State. That's Cuomo. Cuomo is passing edict. He sits there and he goes, I can do whatever I want. Churches, gone. Symbols I don't like, gone.
Supreme
and the cops
Court
go,
decision goes against them, irrelevant. I'll just make a new one.
And the cops go, hey, we don't care what SCOTUS says. We don't care what the Constitution says. We just want that sweet, sweet Skrilla from our emperor.
I think that I agree with that. I think I agree with the 1312 thing, not to put it that way. But I think that if you have 1,300 cops who are watching 12 cops do bad things and do nothing to stop it, what do you have to say for the other 1,300 cops? Why are you not stepping in? Why are you not speaking up? You see what's happening and you do nothing. Like what kind of mindset is in these police departments that they think it's okay that they just let this happen?
Let's break it down. To get more to the heart of the principle. When I see Black Lives Matter complaining about innocent people dying, completely sympathize, I empathize. I don't like that. That's a violation of every constitutional right to take someone's life. But in many of these circumstances, it's unclear. It's not clear cut that the cop was just like, I'm going to kill this man. A lot of times it's like a very serious conflict and we have a political debate. We want to know what's going to happen. George Floyd, most of us who came out, when that story came out, we were like, dude, that's wrong. We don't like what we saw. And then later we learned a bunch of new details and you're like, see, things change. But it's pretty clear cut when a cop dresses up in civilian clothes and then arrests a restaurateur during an economic crisis where people are going homeless, where they're expecting hundreds of millions to starve, and the cops are just stomping people into the ground. That is clear cut. No political debate.
And there's record homelessness now in New York City, and there was an article highlighting some of the pictures of people living on the streets. If you want to talk about unsanitary health conditions, that's it right there. There's people with scabs and scabies and all these kind of horrible illnesses because they have nowhere else to go that are literally, all the housing that they provide for them, a lot of it is filled up. There's an argument that some people make that the homeless people don't want to go to some of these housing, but the housing is getting filled up because of the horrible economic situation that has been created by the government.
You want to know the best part about all this? In Seattle, in Washington, and in Oregon, where they're having these lockdowns, like many other places, and the police are enforcing it. Well, look, the CDC said, right? The CDC was like, you got to lock down. Okay. The CDC also said homeless encampments must remain. It's safer to let them stay than to clear them out. At the same time that the police are saying, we got to follow the CDC orders and shut down your business. Sorry. They're turning around and clearing out homeless encampments in defiance of the CDC. You can't have it both ways. Either you're enforcing the safety of the people because of the pandemic, or you're just crushing the weak.
I think this is a good time for me to pitch a movie that I'm in coming up. Lauren's Southern movie, Crossfire, covers all of these issues in-depthly. And it's very even-handed and fair and honest, and it really takes a good, hard look at the perspective of the police officers, the Black Lives Matter folks. It goes in depth on Antifa. It really does discuss some of these contradictions and where do your loyalties lie and what's it like, being a guy that does good most of the time, but then witnesses something that is illegal or wrong. It's a very well done. There's a lot of good people in it. Elijah Schaefer is in it, and Mike Cernovich and Jack and a few others. It's well worth the view. You should check it out.
Wasn't there like an excerpt talking about the dangers of being a police officer? But isn't there like a statistic that as far as employment, police officers are ranked, 13th or I think even lower on the ranking of deadliest jobs out there?
But I disagree with that. Because you got to understand the difference in the danger from being like a petroleum engineer and being a cop. A petroleum engineer, it's like you do everything right, and sometimes there's a faulty error and something blows, and then you get knocked into the ocean or whatever. Yeah. Being a cop, it's like you don't know which person is going to be the person who's scared and wants to flee or has a warrant, so they're going to pull a gun.
Well, I'm not making that kind of argument that it's totally a safe and wonderful, amazing job. As a police officer, we have to understand the other side of it, because they are dealing with the worst elements of our society, and if you're around that every day, that's going to affect your psyche. Yeah. And that's why with most police officers, we see a higher rate of spousal abuse and also substance abuse than we do with any other profession out there, since, of course, I think there is something to say about people being affected by their environment.
Correlation. It could be that people who are prone to drug abuse and spousal abuse like to take risks, like adrenaline, like being violent, so they end up being cops. You don't know. But I will say this.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
The movie does address this very issue. Talks about PTSD among the police department.
So what you're saying is that all cops are drug addicts?
Yeah, exactly right. And I said, Civil War, let's go. But it's really worth it because it really, Scooter Downey also and John Dutoit, who worked on Hoax with Mike Cernovich, they did the directing and the producing. It's fantastic and really well thought out. So check it out. Crossfire with Lauren Southern.
This past year has really made me just a very personal responsibility person and much more libertarian, very, very libertarian.
Two things happen. You got older. And a little bit, a little bit more to conserve, let's say.
I don't think getting older played a role in it. I think it was earlier this year I was like, no guns. Yeah, it was the riots.
The riots
and the cops standing down in many instances. Something, and I was like, wow, I can't rely on these police officers anymore. What good are they?
Yeah.
But in these big cities, I said, these people are attacking the innocent. We need someone to stop them. That's what the cops are for. Now the cops are the ones doing the boot stomping. So I'm like, all right, I'm out. I'm going to go live in the mountains. We're going to get 100 acres of farmland in the middle of nowhere. It's actually rather cheap when you're in the middle of nowhere. You can't do much with it.
No Starlink, no DSL, no nothing. It's cheap, though.
Viasat, internet.
Does it work?
Yeah, it does. You can get like 5 megabits up and down. You can get like 20 down and 5 up.
5 up is enough. Viasat.
So we've streamed this show from satellite before.
Yeah.
And the quality was like 720p. And it's not perfect, but if we're not going to go out there to do the show. We're going to have the land just for fun.
Yeah.
We're gonna,
I'm thinking
ATVs
about
and we're going to ride bikes.
Very first time I was on the show back in March or something, pre-lockdown, February, we were talking about my 90-acre medieval town. You can fit 50-some thousand people in a walled town on 90 acres.
We're going to do a hippie libertarian kind of town where people can chill and just kind of have their own space. Friends can come hang out. We'll build some skateboard stuff, and it's going to be. We got to figure out where it's going to be because there's a couple different things we can do. It might actually be like we build houses. Luke's talking about these hippie dome houses. We'll see what happens. Yeah. But I don't want to get too much into the hippy dippy stuff. I'm just pointing out. I got to a certain point after watching all this stuff where I'm like, first of all, the Republican Party won't fight for you. The Republican Party is not going to stand up for you. You give them the chance. And they will Lion King Trump off the cliff. Trump sitting there saying, "Brother, help me," and McConnell's like, "No," puts the claws in his hands, and Trump goes flying. So if you can't count on them to fight for you, defend your rights, while all of this insanity is going down, then what do? You got to find your own space. Because I'll tell you something really funny. Wasn't it awesome how Josh Hawley and Bernie Sanders got together for the stimulus package? It was great, right? You don't think so?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like you're setting me up, Tim.
Josh Hawley, a Republican, And Bernie Sanders, progressive Democrat, agreed on this $1,200 stimulus package and are pushing it, trying to force it. And that's what the American people need, right?
I think we should have been giving them Trump bucks all year.
Trump bucks. It's amazing to me that while I've praised that outright, it is the Democrats destroying the economy and then the Republicans siding with the Democrat on how they should solve the problem in the temporary. Instead of Josh Hawley coming out and saying, we're going to reopen the economies and pass a bill mandating federally that the Constitution be respected and these places reopen and their jobs can come back. Instead of doing that, once again, it was on the Democrats' terms. Josh Hawley came and joined the Democrat position on how to solve the problem caused by the Democrats.
I mean, it's kind of hard. They put you into a tough spot. Do you want to be the guy who's wrong and then it leads to 2 million new deaths of corona? Not saying that that's what would happen, but that's what they say what will happen.
A good leader would.
Well, that's
a
tough,
good leader
man.
would be the one
It's
who
tough.
would say something very simply like, my friends, considering the coronavirus has spiked again, the first attempt at a lockdown is not going to stop this problem. And if we stay locked down, then more people will lose their lives to suicide, to homelessness, to desperation, to a lack of access to medical care.
Bro, I'm with you 110%.
We must make a hard choice. And that means compromise. Here's the plan. Social distancing will remain in effect nationwide. We hope the governors agree with us. The federal governors have the authority to instruct that, but we hope you all agree. We encourage strongly masks to the best of your abilities, but the elderly will be protected. Everyone else, please get on with your lives and be safe. That's the solution.
Or just simply, hey, let's not send sick COVID patients to nursing homes. I think that would be a great start.
Yeah.
I think less government is the answer, and I think the only way to get less government is by having more responsible, sovereign individuals taking responsibility into their own hands. I mean, I was in New York City earlier this year. I left, and I'm not looking back, and I'm never coming back ever again. I mean, there's so many unprepared,
that RV is pretty
desperate,
sweet, though, man.
The what?
Your RV is pretty sweet.
It's nice, but I literally left New York City, went straight to New Hampshire, and started doing survival training courses, and then doing my own trainings of them as I was. I don't want to even
from Occupy Wall Street to the wilderness.
I don't even want to say what I've been doing in the training I received. But
I watched Luke gut a rabbit. Nice. Make a stew. I'm kidding.
Oh,
I
was legit impressed.
There was gutting involved, but that's a whole nother subject.
I heard Luke was chasing chickens around.
Yes, he was.
Chasing chickens.
Chasing chickens
Don't
around.
make those. You want to make a joke here?
I'm not making any jokes.
Chicks, yeah.
But listen, it's up to everyone to understand the situation in front of them and to act responsibly. Stop looking for someone else to do something for you. Stop putting someone above you. You are responsible for your own life, your own choices. Make some smart ones. Stop blaming everyone else for your problems.
I agree largely with that. And this dovetails with the conversation I've been having with Balaji on Twitter and about labor mobility. Okay, so there was this idea in free trade that if you have free trade of capital, free trade of products, and free trade of people, that the people will move to where the opportunities are. And you can destroy this economy over here and people will move over here. But what we found after WTO, after Black Bloc, Seattle, all that, what we found is that people don't like to move.
Yep.
Labor mobility is not as prevalent as the models, the economic models like to say. And so the industries left and then the people stayed. Then we have opioids, we have declining life expectancies, we have hollowed out towns, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that same phenomenon, I wonder if this low labor mobility is going to apply. You got out of Philly. You got out of New York. I'm getting out of DC. Where am I going to go? I'm going to a jurisdiction where I have the confidence that my rights and the things that I want will be protected for as long as possible, right? I would move to Southwestern Virginia, but it's a blue state. I don't know what's going to happen. So I look at West Virginia, right? Because I want to make sure that I go to a county that has a history of voting for sheriffs that would probably say, hey, you know what? We're not going to enforce these stupid laws like that. You do you. And there are jurisdictions like that. That's this kind of research, this sovereignty, this individual sovereignty. You have to be that proactive. I don't know. Are people going to be, is this the thing that's going to make people want to move more so than like the town factory closing? I don't know.
I think
that's a big deal, right?
Well, they are moving in record numbers. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people that have left New York City and are not coming back. They're talking about converting office spaces into residential buildings. Who's going to live in them when there's no jobs and there's no work there? The only reason people go through this rat-infested, piss-smelling hellhole that is New York City.
Sour milk.
Yes, sour milk is also true. There's also a particular smell when spring comes. You know, summer's coming when you smell that garbage. It's a weird sense that only true New Yorkers really know. I mean, I grew up there my entire life. I loved it when it was, you know, everyone has their little stories, but right now it's not the same city at all. And to see the abuse that people are going through, there's literal police officers walking around with binoculars. There's police officers looking through people's windows, fining them for the basic human activities of just trying to live. So I don't see a lot of people surviving, thriving, or if they do, they're going to be servants of a state that's going to use and abuse them at record levels like they are right now.
Now think about what's going to happen, because what did Fauci and Bill Gates say? Lockdown could persist into 2022.
Yep.
Or at least some form of it. At a certain point, do you think some people are going to have no food and no home, and they're going to be really angry and looking for it? And do you think they'll put their survival over any law or community? It's going to be like that movie, you know, what is it called? Daybreakers? Was that what it's called?
With the vampires?
Yeah, the vampires. Yeah. You ever see that one? So it's basically almost everyone in society becomes a vampire, right? Because one by one, people start becoming vampires, and they farm humans, but they're running out. Everyone's turning into a vampire. And then eventually, when they start getting desperate for blood, they go nuts, start attacking other people and stealing it and fighting and turning into disgusting monster creatures. And it's probably a simpler analogy just to point out food riots and any other revolution. But it's a funny movie. It's a cool movie. At a certain point, when we're locked down and people are lining up for miles in food banks, which we've already been seeing all year, at a certain point when they're going to your business and arresting you, saying you have no right to money to live, people are going to snap.
Not only that,
they're going to be like, I don't.
They're being arrested for not giving their money to Amazon and Walmart. That's essentially
what I'm saying is, in the next year or two with this lockdown, at a certain point, someone's going to be like, I have no food, I have nowhere to go, and I'm hungry, and they're going to take. They don't care because they're going to choose survival. Here's the best part: we had this guy go on MSNBC, this doctor. You know what he said? I kid you not. It was the craziest thing. He said, if you get the COVID vaccine, you can still get the virus. Mm-hmm. You can still get the virus, and we don't know if it'll actually, even if you can still get it, and so you can't travel, and you still have to wear masks, and you still have to social distance. This is a misunderstanding. Then what's the point of getting it? Mm-hmm. I'm not. It was on MSNBC. I almost think it's like, are they lying?
We are being led by idiots.
The system is too complex. We can't be led by anybody.
We have people in politics that got voted in because they're popular.
What I'm saying is, or the D and the R. What I'm saying is, right now, I think the best bet is, look, land is cheap in the middle of nowhere, but what you forfeit is access to clean running water. You know, when you live in New York City,
a lot more than that. Although, by the way, drill a well, you got the best water in the world. I mean, it's not.
It's becoming more and more scarce, and there's many predictions that there actually be more conflicts because of water rights coming. Very
so that's
soon.
why you want well water. But the issue with well is you got to do a lot of testing. You got bacteria. You got mineral deposits.
I've watched enough Homestead Rescue to know that it is possible.
I watched that show.
We had uranium.
Every single one.
Yeah. And if you're near farmland, you can get uranium build up. And that's so you need a good filtration system. You need like UV light, high level filters and stuff. This is the kind of stuff we're going through now. But it is some of the best water. We got the water here. Man, it is some of the best water you'll ever drink. The water faucet is better than city water. It's amazing.
We just turned the front lawn into a little farming area. And again, I can't tell people this enough. Learn to farm. I think it's going to be something very important that people are going to need to learn. Plus, it builds a lot of good gut biome to keep your hands in the dirt, to actually work with seeds, to actually work with your own food. That's one of the most principal, amazing things that you could do on the face of this earth is provide for yourself. And it sounds like manual labor for a lot of people, for a lot of flip-flop wearing, Starbucks drinking yuppies. It's a nightmare. But in reality, when you start doing it, you get your hands in the dirt. It's one of the most beautiful, amazing feelings that you could ever have.
As my good friend Joe Norman, who's a homesteader in New Hampshire, told me, he said it reconnects you with the low frequency vibrations of the earth. And then that is a healthy place to be rather than the high frequency vibrations of social media and your handheld device and all that.
Hippies call it grounding, and I'm looking at Ian because I expect Ian to know what that is.
Yeah, I used to stand barefoot in the dirt, and I would notice when it was cold outside, it would warm me up because the warmth from the earth would come up into my feet, and when it was hot outside, it would cool me down because the heat in my body would go into the earth.
Well, there is an energy, there's a frequency that a lot of people talk about.
All right, you crystal weighing.
Hey, it's true.
You know what? Hey, maybe West Virginia isn't the right place. maybe Wyoming is. They have like really bad cell service. And so
Cold.
Yes.
So much snow.
Yeah, that's
Appalachia is one of the most fertile places in America.
Beautiful.
It has low incident of natural disasters. It is near enough to large metropolitan centers that you can get to anywhere in the world that you want to. I'm
So
all
you're
for it. The
saying-
problem is with West Virginia, and no offense to my West Virginia people, it is quite literally the oldest, the sickest, the fattest, the dumbest, the brokest, the least employed
Opioid.
state in the union.
So what you're saying is
Yeesh.
Nowhere to go but up.
we can relocate again the Timcast company and everything we're building,
Yes.
and start bringing revenue into these towns and build up and help people find jobs, and then
That's assuming you stop being Amazon's #1 customer, right? You're gonna have to buy all.
oh,
you-
man.
You're gonna have to buy all that stuff local.
no. As much as I can local, right?
Yeah,
But bringing these tools and these things from Amazon into this area is going to build up that area. You know,
agreed.
bringing the people is going to bring more business, more bars, more clubs. You know, all that stuff will slowly start coming
And
together.
then all of a sudden, people will be voting Democrat, and you'll be like, "I got to get the hell out of here."
Yeah.
The Amazon
As
thing's
soon as you've
tough.
seen the Starbucks and the artisan donuts, get out.
Yeah, exactly.
But I have to,
I just
I have
had
to
some
plug New
beignets.
Hampshire in here, though. I have
Yes.
to plug New Hampshire and the Free State Project.
you're wrong.
I love it. I have a love affair. I mean, summers, springs, falls, New Hampshire for me. Winters, Florida. Well, that was my plan, but now I'm still here. Depends on where you are in the region that you decide to locate
it's like-
yourself
it's
in.
like
You have
10
a lot of
times.
water. You have no venomous snakes. You have no venomous spiders. You have a lot of land. You have a lot of territory. But most importantly, you have a community of individuals that don't like the government, love responsibility, and they're building the Free State Project, which is literally a place where they set up marketplace, stores where people sell and trade and barter. It's one of the largest places for cryptocurrency transactions than anywhere else in all of the United States. And to me, being there, spending my spring and summer there, I absolutely loved it.
and it's like 10 times the cost of West Virginia,
I mean,
and they still
yeah,
don't
bigger-
have internet.
The internet's pretty good there.
You can get
it wasn't
decent
bad.
acreage in West Virginia for like $500 to $1,500 an acre.
You can get 100 acres for like 50, 60K.
Yeah.
If you're in like Southwest or Central West Virginia.
Yeah.
Huge, massive plots. I saw one really cool. It was like on top of a mountain. It was crazy. And then they shaved off like the top so you could build a house.
Yeah, dude, you could get for the money that I'm paying in Washington D.C. I was just in Southwest Virginia. I was at Hot Springs, Virginia, where, as a matter of fact, I was on vacation, Tim. On vacation, walking out of a restaurant without my mask on. Someone runs up behind me, sir, 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 sir. And I was like, oh, man, I'm going to get yelled at for not having my mask on. I turn around, and it's a guy in his mid-20s or early 30s. He goes, dude, you're on Tim Pool. Are you Jack Murphy? I saw you on Tim Pool, dude. I was just like on vacation at a random place trying to get away.
That's
I think
Shout out
people-
to that guy if he's watching right
Yeah,
now.
shout out,
Yeah,
bro.
yeah.
I think people should know too if they don't, because I saw some people in the chat don't realize that you're booked as a regular, like you have a regular schedule for the show.
Yes.
It's not. Yeah, it's not like.
Every other Wednesday I'm here. Also, shout out to the dog walker in Washington, D.C. that stopped me and my family. Again, just walking down the street, said, hey, Jack Murphy, seen you on Tim Pool.
That's so great.
So
it-
whenever we have you on, the show does a little better.
Oh, I think,
Yeah, like the
thank you very
people
much.
people like watching. Having
I
hang out.
appreciate it. Thanks, guys. So in Southwest Virginia, for the money that I pay in D.C., I could have 1,000 acres with a horse ranch in the mountains with a river.
Yep.
Same money.
Let's do it.
I am.
And what's stopping you?
I have a complicated divorce situation with my
Got
kids and
kids,
shared
yeah.
custody. Otherwise, dude, I would have been long gone. Kids homeschooled in Southwest
Well, bro.
Virginia immediately.
I'm gonna find a massive plot, like 100 acres somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
Think bigger,
telling
bro.
you to do
Think
that.
bigger.
Bigger where though?
No, but it's fine. But 1,000 acres.
But that's
hundreds. Nothing.
that's a lot of money. That's like $1 million.
It's like,
probably
it's
worth
like
it,
3
man.
YouTube videos, bro.
I mean, and you'd also got to find land like next to
So
each
your
other.
money is
Otherwise, you're
inflating.
buying like plots all over the place.
Yeah.
Finding that's what I was saying. Like Wyoming's probably the bigger secret. It's
too
probably like
cold.
$5,000 for like 5,000 acres. Just like some ridiculous number.
It's like a barren wasteland.
Dude, when I was driving through Wyoming, listen. I drove from New York to Chicago to North Dakota, then down the West Coast to California to Los Angeles. When we went through Wyoming, there was a period where we drove like 300 something miles with no gas. I was with my friend. And then I was like, dude, we're about to run out of gas and there's nothing around us anywhere. It's just straight road. if we don't find a gas station, we're in serious trouble. It was super cold. There was like whiteout half the time. Couldn't see. And I was driving, I think, a Honda Civic. Ridiculous car to be driving through this terrain. There was one point where the ground was all ice, and I was just like sliding every few seconds, and I was like, "We're gonna die! This is great." Anyway,
great.
We're down to probably like the tiny, like it's like it's on an E, and I'm like, we probably got 20, 30 miles, and we drive past
Civic.
in a Honda Civic. We drive past this building. It's a little tiny farmhouse looking shack or whatever, and I don't think twice. And my friend goes, "A gas pump," and I was like, "What?" And I look back as we drive past it. 2 little gas pumps, no signs, nothing. I slam the brakes on, I do a U-turn, I go back, and I walk up to the door, there's no signs, and I knock and I look, and through the window I can see it was a store. And I'm like, get out of here. And I walk in, there's a little store, and there's a guy sitting there with a little dog, and I was like, hey, you sell gas? And he goes, yep. And I was like, can I pump gas? He's like, yep. And I was like,
$25 a gallon, sir.
No, it was not that expensive. But I was like, there was no sign. I swear, that's how crazy it was. And the best part was my phone didn't work at all. It was something called, I think it's called Union Cellular, I think it was years ago. But now they probably have better cell structure infrastructure along like certain roads. But man, maybe that's the big secret. According to, I think it was Animaniacs, nobody lives there anyway. Do you know anybody who lives there or who's from there?
Fewer people live in Wyoming than in the city of Washington, D.C., I believe. Something like that.
Sounds right,
Yeah, why D.C.'s got like a million.
Well, I'm thinking D.C. proper, which is like 700,000. It's like that. I think it's that few people in Wyoming, yeah.
Yeah, Wyoming is like, I think 535,000.
There you go.
That means you can probably buy a whole lot of land and do a whole lot of whatever you want.
China's doing it.
Yeah, they are.
I saw an article about that Chinese guy that bought land in Texas, and he built a airstrip, and he's been like flying people in on this airstrip. And I read it; it said 200 something land airstrip. I was like, oh, 200 acres, that's a lot. No, and I went back and read it again: 200 square miles.
Yeah.
This Chinese guy, maybe there was some affiliation with the wrong people, just acquiring mass land in Texas, 200 square miles.
That's happening a lot.
Nebraska might be pretty good. But you know, I think the thing is, when you're closer to the East Coast, like West Virginia, it's not that cold, not a whole lot of snow. It's like easier, but it can get hot in the summer. You know, so it depends. You live in the mountains.
Middle America is
probably harder to
flooded pretty hard too, and they got tornadoes.
But if you buy land in Nebraska, you can certainly grow corn, and then live off of corn. You'd be a corn person. Yeah, they love their corn.
Hey, you said something about Amazon earlier.
What about it?
Do we have to stop using it?
Yes.
I'm obsessed with Amazon. I love Amazon. They get it here the next day, 2 days later.
The Amazon microchip is in your brain already.
You can buy almost everything on Amazon. I don't want to stop using it. I've given over to the Borg or something.
It's awfully convenient, bro.
It's not just that. It's you know, when I was living in the Philly area, it was really easy to be like, let's go to this store or that store to buy what we need. Now we're in the middle of nowhere. There is no that store that we need. It doesn't exist.
Now you would have taken a 3-hour trip into the city once a month to get, go into town to get the things.
Now I tell you, the mail. So the way it works when you live in the middle of nowhere is that Amazon delivers your items to the post office, not to your house, and then the post office delivers your Amazon packages most of the time. And boy, are they salty with us.
I bet. You better tip your postman, buddy.
Oh, can you do that?
Of course.
Yeah, you can.
I just tipped my trash guys today.
Yeah,
and I'll get the mailman. You should especially tip your regular mailman.
I didn't know you were allowed to give them money or whatever. I don't want to.
You're like supposed to in New York City, like your mailman and your garbage man.
Really?
Yeah.
Your mailman? That's like a federal job. You're giving him cash.
That's what I did.
But
in New York City.
sometimes, like
you want to get all them boxes from Amazon.
Ian ordered like 50 gallons of vinegar for some reason
to go with the 50 gallons of beans,
honey, and the lady and the mail lady's like pulls up with this big old truck full of vinegar, and she was like, "Why are these so heavy? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
One
man.
of them was upside down and exploded.
Broken.
Vinegar all over her truck.
Yeah, dude, it was awful.
She's cool.
Super cool.
The mailman must be here every day for like at least a half hour unloading stuff.
It's like 10 minutes.
Dude, I just get a whim and I'll order one thing. That's another trip for the mail person.
Just like a bunch of vinegar, and one of them exploded, and her whole truck stank the whole time.
Such a mess.
Yeah, and then but we have to order things for snacks for the guests and like batteries and stuff. So we're running a business, so we do like a big order of batteries, and then they have this big heavy box. They're like, "What is this?" We recently bought a whole bunch of airsoft stuff. See, this is a cool thing. Just go in the backyard. We got Luke. We went to the store and we just basically bought a ton of airsoft stuff.
The lady was trying not to sell us the stuff. She didn't believe we were buying all this stuff.
This was the craziest thing, because I'm like, okay, we're gonna do 5 rifles and 5 airsoft handguns. And then the guy starts taking him down, and Luke's like, "We'll take that one." And the lady's like, "No. What are you doing? Put him back. And Luke's like, "We're buying it." She goes, "No, you don't need this. What are you doing?" And then finally, it wasn't till I was like, "I have a credit card. We are going to be buying this." Why? Well, Luke's an instructor, and Luke is going to, do basic trainings and
Well, if you do any firearms training, it's best to do it with airsoft first, especially with the type of caliber and replica possibilities that you have here, because you don't want to be using a real gun when it comes to practicing some real CQB
someone
or
who's
some
never
advanced stuff, especially with people who never held a gun in their hand. So you'd never want to do that. So
but
airsoft
also,
is perfect.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And we're working on the vlog, and we're getting ideas for it. And so we're thinking of putting up a wall with like airsoft stuff. We're gonna have a lot of fun with it. But man, she just didn't, want to let us buy this stuff.
Why was that?
I guess she just didn't think
you looked like riffraff.
Yeah, because we look like riffraff. She was like, "Do you have a team?" And I was like, "No, we're just gonna, horse around and But we have this big space to do it. So the next thing I think is what we're gonna do with this. I'm hoping that we can get something big enough, but actually really close, so I can actually build a house and live there for the most part. But it might be difficult. We'll see how it plays out. And then we might end up just getting something really far away that's just like empty land. And then we've got, RVs. And this is crazy. This is interesting. Dome housing is really easy to build.
They're geodesic.
Yeah, it's so it solves a lot of simple problems for,
Burning Man IRL coming
I
up
know
on the Simple property.
I know a Burning Man architect that can come help us build those.
Yeah, it's like
Of course
it's like
you do.
like latticed aluminum pipes or whatever, and then they cover it in plastic, and then they insulate it.
Graphene.
Super cheap.
Make
I've
solar
I've
panels.
watched enough Homestead Rescue to know.
There we go. And you can build dome sphere. You can build spheres that
So
are
in the
half
basement-
underground.
I literally lived in one in New Hampshire a couple weeks ago at a three-story one, doubled one that was connected and had everything running through it, and it was just
you can build them modularly.
Yep.
So like have dome here, a dome here, and a dome here, and then on top you have like a dome here and a dome here. So you have 5 domes and like a pyramidal, you can put them in a circle.
It's just really cheap. It's like substantially cheaper. That's really
and
the
really
gist of it.
structurally sound.
I'm
Like
headed.
they can handle
Let's
earthquakes.
do it. Let's go. I'm ready.
Handles
Yeah.
earthquakes,
Yeah.
and the rain and the snow rolls right off. So it like makes a lot of sense.
Perfect.
So I'm thinking like we want one big, super big dome.
Super
the
dome.
concrete foundation. That's the challenge. That's expensive. Very expensive. Yeah. But if
I
you're
wonder if we can use bitumen instead.
bitumen,
Yeah, it's like an advanced type of plastic broken up that we should be making roads out of, but because of planned obsolescence, they want to make it out of what they use because it cracks every year and they get to spend.
I'll take whatever foundation we
bitumen.
can get, maybe recycled plastics, whatever. And then the idea is like, just to DIY it, man, to build the space and have a fun place to hang out. And also, at a certain point, working with your hands, having that farm. You ever, Jack, have you ever grown food and
Yes.
then eaten it? Isn't it amazing?
Yes, I have. In one of my last houses in DC, I built an elevated bed farm in my backyard, and I grew all kinds of things, and broccoli and eggplants and tomatoes and peppers and all kinds of stuff. We had eggplants that were like this big. I don't know what was going on, but like they grew this big. It was amazing.
Wow.
And then we had a whole field basically of broccoli. And then I came out the next day, man, deer. Eating my urban
we had
deer,
rabbits.
my urban deer. So I love gardening. I love farming.
Dude.
I've been reading a lot about it. I can't wait to get back at it.
When I lived in Miami, we had this small farm and we had chickens. And the first time the chickens laid eggs, I was like, can we just eat it? Like, it was so, I'd never done anything like this before. And then,
City boy.
like, I was like, yeah, city boy. I Googled it. I'm like, the chicken laid an egg. Can I eat it? It's like, enjoy. I'm like, just want to make sure, man. I don't know.
Do I have to homogenize it?
Yeah, I don't
Do
know.
I have
I
to
don't know.
pasteurize
Do
it?
I have to sit on it? Did you try to sit or put it
Do I
behind?
need
Put it in
a
your beanie?
rooster to kind of like do his thing to make sure it's a good egg? So I had never had a chicken before. I didn't know the process by which they eggs are ready to go, and now you just pick it up, and then dude, every day more eggs, piling up like crazy. We were eating eggs like crazy.
Yeah, man.
was
Eggs.
awesome.
Let's get some eggs.
We got to
Let's
build
do
a
it.
chicken dome.
Chicken dome.
I want to, and you know what I'll do? I'm going to 3D print armor for the chickens. No joke. So that way they don't peck each other, but also when the predators show up, the chickens, when they do their natural thing to like defend themselves, I'll make it so that when they go like this, spikes go.
There you go.
I was thinking if we build,
I saw that on Homestead Rescue.
if we build a big house that's like a big giant square, but in the middle is a giant open courtyard that we could have a garden and all the chickens, then the wolves couldn't get in and the
No,
deer
I
couldn't
got you
get
one
in,
better.
right?
No. What we're
You
going to do
want
is
chickens in the middle of your house,
Yeah.
bro?
what we're
Like
no
the
stop.
courtyard.
See,
You don't want
Ian,
No,
I'm
you
sorry,
don't.
Ian. I
Talk
have a
about
better.
the
Let him
limit
do it.
zone.
Let him do it. Let him do it. Ian, do it. It's a great idea.
Hold on,
I
be
want
great.
to.
I have a better solution.
Underground.
The 3D printed armor that we'll have for the chickens will have a thin mesh so that their wingspans expanded and the chickens can actually fly.
Oh man, that's
Yeah.
advanced
You'll never see
technology.
them
So then the chickens start flying away.
They'll be gone.
Yeah.
They'll be gone.
You know, people don't realize this too. One thing is that the chickens can jump like what, 10 or 12 feet or something?
Whoa.
Yeah, they can go a long
Because they
way.
can jump and fly, but then
Yeah.
they like eventually come back down. So we had a rooster who kept jumping onto the other property because he could hear all them sweet chickens. You know, and he was
All
like,
them hens.
yeah, and this rooster, he was like, ooh, I'm gonna get me some. And then he
Chicks.
jumped over, and all the roosters over there were really big, and so they were like, yo, what are you doing? And started pecking him, and then he panicked, and he couldn't get back over because he was too dumb.
It was a
So-
fight. What kind of fight?
Yeah, a rooster fight.
Rooster fight.
Roosters.
A rooster fight.
How about we go to super chats?
Yes.
finally?
Super chat. Super chat.
All right, let's see.
By the way, I'm Jack Murphy. You can follow me on Jack Murphy Live on Twitter and sub Jack Murphy Live on YouTube, please. Thank you very much.
And Jack is here periodically because not just every other Wednesday. Sometimes you'll pop in and
when the circumstances demand it.
yes,
right.
which is frequently.
Frequently. No.
All right, let's go. If you haven't already, smash the like button. It's greatly appreciated. Subscribe to the notification bell. Let's read some of these super chats. Ground Floor Guthrie says, for Luke, sent you a message on Parler regarding brushcalf survivalist classes here in the East. Check out Dave Canterbury and Self-Reliance Outfitters in Ohio and Cold Cracker Inn, I believe Western PA. Cool.
Yeah, I'll check my Parler right now.
Parler?
Under Luke We Are Change. I'll
This
check
is
that right
interesting. Jonathan Galterini says Department of National Intelligence blocked Trump from exercising his election integrity executive order from 2018 by missing the required deadline per the DNI official Twitter account. I thought the deadline was like tomorrow, no later than 45 days.
Yeah,
oh
they
no!
moved it to the
Wait,
18th.
no, was that the 18th?
Yeah, they moved it to the 18th. Remember? Catherine Herridge was talking about it.
They moved the report, right? So it's past the deadline.
Right, yeah.
It's over. Trump's. Everyone thought Trump was going to pull out this last ditch executive order of some sort. He got jammed up.
By the way, when we build the chicken house, it's going to be huge. So the chickens will have like a lot of space in the middle. But it's going to be like shipping containers all in a big rectangle.
And you living in the middle of it.
No,
With
the
the chicken-
chickens
with
will
the
be in the
chicken
middle.
poop.
I'll have like a room in one of the shipping containers.
That'll be great. You can live
it's
among
gonna
the
be-
chickens.
It's a fantasy.
Mr. Sly
I'll
Trip
draw you a
says.
picture.
Mr. Sly Trip says, would you be willing to invite David Pakman on IRL? Absolutely. Yes. I've known David for a really long time. I'd love to have him on the show. But I think, and I don't mean this directly at David, but we've had a lot of high-profile leftists, some of the biggest, be like, I totally want to come on the show, and then later go, but COVID. It doesn't seem to stop any moderate
COVID's a
conservative.
bee.
And there are even some, we've had a handful of, center-left liberal or leftist types. We had Jen Perlman. She was great. Vosh came down. He didn't seem to take issue with it for the most part. I invited Vosh to be here with Alex Jones, and he said he didn't want to do it because he was worried about COVID. And that was unfortunate because that would have been great.
He said, give him like 6 months. He was like, I'll be back. Give me like 6 months.
I wanted, Luke had this idea for the Royal Rumble to get
do it.
big, prominent left-wing personalities and right-wing personalities, and then have like a conversation/debate discussion.
Blood sport.
Yes.
Kind of. I think when you're in person, though, it changes everything. When people are on Skype, they're like, they're all screaming and yelling. But when you get someone in, it controls things a bit because they act like people around people.
It's the great thing about YouTube
Yeah.
collaborations in general when you see like all your favorite YouTube stars in the same room. And
Yeah.
we're just
A
kinda
lot of
having-
people talk like they've never been punched in the face for saying something rude online.
Yeah.
When you
They
see
sure
someone
do.
face to face, there's a big difference in how you act.
Yep.
Indeed. I like to just sit there and just expand my presence.
Yes.
It works.
You're
I
big
believe
man.
it.
I am
All right.
a big man.
Very muscular.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Petty says, the other day Ian mentioned revolution against taxes rather than secession. That's at least half the reason the Civil War happened.
Yeah,
Really, was it?
Jack, you brought up federal income tax, which basically didn't get started until 1913.
Right.
And that's right around the Federal Reserve got started. What
Yeah.
a shock. So they're extorting us. I'm down with getting rid of federal income tax. It's ridiculous. It's only just like 100 years old.
Everybody would vote yes for that, right?
I think
For
we
sure.
get pretty much everybody.
Pretty sure you get like 90% of America. If there was a referendum nationwide, should we get rid of federal income tax? They'd be like, yes. Just yes.
Let's do it.
Yeah. The commander says, Tim talks about Trump forming a new party, but he used to be part of the New York Independent Party. They joined up with Reform, Natural Law, and a few other parties to form the Alliance Party, which is populist center. He should take over Alliance. Yes. And then all the Trump supporters should say, goodbye, GOP. Look, the way I see it is, if you've got the political willpower and the momentum, the Republicans aren't doing anything for you. I guess the idea is with Trump, in charge, it forced the Republicans behind the Trump supporters to give them that, that wind. But if the Republicans now are like taking the opportunity to throw the Trump supporters under the bus, Trump supporters should be like, without us, you're done. And really show
Trump would never have won in 2016 with a third party candidacy.
Of course.
Never.
Yeah, of course.
And so there is that always red R voter that you need.
I think if the Republicans right now formed another party, then of the Trump supporters from the new party, they'd still lose.
Really?
But I think they would lose. Yeah,
you mean for 2024?
I think they would start winning local races immediately. I think they would start eventually winning House seats faster, and then we could see any other third party. A Trump supporter party coming out against Republicans would win some House seats very quickly. Not a whole lot, maybe, but in key areas, definitely. Like, we've seen some weird things happen, but this is the opportunity to get an actual third party to break through and tell the GOP goodbye. And then things will start to change because the Republicans are plastic.
I just don't want some cult worship. Like, it's about Trump, so it's about getting Trump into office. You don't really need a party around that of other people Trump sycophants.
No, it's about constitutionalism.
Look, here's the thing. Trump had an opportunity to build institutions, to build a network, to build think tanks, to build a whole community, a whole ecosystem supporting MAGA, America First, all of that. And guess what? The number one thing that he failed at as president, building an ecosystem, building a party, building a network, building an institution. This idea that he's going to just start a third party and build out an institution capable of governing the country is just ludicrous.
No,
it's just
ludicrous. No. Trump's not going to do it. Trump supporters will eventually start rallying around other people.
If you don't have the leadership, then that's not going to happen.
And that's the advantage right now. You can't rely on Trump to just do it, but you do have Trump and people believe in him. And the Republicans have shown they're absolutely ready, willing, and waiting to knife him figuratively in the back. If you're going to keep voting for Republicans and Democrats, then I'm going to keep moving further away and saying, y'all are on your own, man.
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling.
Yeah, because they're exactly. So what's the choice? Stand up right now while you have the wind at your back. And no, look, I think the Democrats are going to win in Georgia. Trump's not on the ticket. The Republicans did well in 2016. You know why? Trump was on the ticket. He inspired new people to come on board. 9 million people. You pointed it out.
2018.
Gone. You know why? Trump wasn't on the ticket.
That's right.
The New York Times said a large portion of Trump's new voter base did not turn out because he wasn't on the ticket. So the Republicans lost the House. In 2020, the Republicans did really well, regained a bunch of seats, took many state level seats, and maintained control so far of the Senate, and they're teetering. Trump lost. We'll see how things play, I guess, on January 6th. But with no Trump on the ticket and Mitch McConnell, I'll tell you this, everything aside, Mitch McConnell coming out the other day and saying, please don't support Trump on January 6th. How many Trump supporters are going to be like, okay, Mitch, and I won't support you on the 5th? How about that?
Yeah. Do you think that they're, I'm sleeping on the senator's name from West Virginia. Is there another?
Manchin?
Yeah. Is there another one like him? Who's number 49 out of all those guys who like closer to moderate? Like, for example, if the Democrats in the Senate wanted to be like 1,000 Supreme Court justices and then the filibuster, I mean, are there not one or two?
Yeah, Manchin would be like the stop on it.
But is there one more? Is there one more?
One more Democrat?
Yeah, who would be like, I think it's probably a bad idea to put 1,000 Supreme Court justices.
I don't even know if Manchin would really stand up to the party. Like, it's the political establishment machine. You know, all these Democrats who won in 2018 promised moderate policy and kitchen table issues. And then the moment they got in, Pelosi went up to him and started screaming, "Good morning, Sunday morning." And they all said, "Whatever you say, ma'am," and voted for impeachment.
Yeah. I say that to Betsy every Sunday. By the way.
Good morning, Sunday morning.
Yeah.
I love it.
Not intentionally. It just comes out.
Betsy's a cat, by the way.
Toxoplasmosis. That's all I have to say.
All right, Luke.
All right, let's read another
Sour
one.
grapes.
Balian says, "Yeah, man, I'm an electrician of 15 years, and I was cringing the other day when you kept resetting the breaker. Like, ugh, we're going to hear that Poole's compound burnt down due to power overloads. Hopefully you've got an electrician up there to help you out." So here's the issue with that.
Why did the breaker flip? Oh, it doesn't matter. Let's just throw it over again.
Well, there's a real question because we changed nothing. And then we unplugged half of the things in here, and the breaker still flipped. So I was like, wow, we got a problem.
Yeah.
So the electrician came in and said, "I don't see a problem. I can't tell you what's going on." So we just ran a line to a different circuit to split the load as much as we can. But something happened that's bad, and the electrician couldn't see anything wrong with it. We had 2 people look at it, actually. One guy was just like, it looks fine. I just don't understand. We didn't add anything up here. We actually took the PlayStation out. We reduced the load that we had in the first place, but for some reason...
It was that windy day.
No post-podcast Spelunky?
No, it's gone.
Oh
I got a PS5 now. I'm playing Phoenix
Spelunky's
Rising.
on the shelf.
Oh, there we go.
I tried playing Cyberpunk. Man, it was awful.
Yeah.
Cyberpunk was so bad.
Have you played it? Have you guys touched
I have not. I haven't gotten a PS5.
Have you heard about Cyberpunk, though?
I have
It's
not.
supposed to be like the biggest game, and it is just
Been in development for 7 years.
And the voice
Keanu
acting.
Reeves is in it.
Oh, so it's behind the times then.
It is. It is.
Seriously.
The voice acting is like some of the worst. I was impressed how bad it was.
Oh, nice.
The
Thank
guy
you.
being like, it's clear that the guy who read the lines for the main character like had a stack of script lines and just read them one at a time very quickly and went through them. Maybe they were rushed. I don't know. But it's like, is this the job? You mean I have to do what? I'll do it. And I'm like, what is this? Like, who's he talking to?
Out of
Like,
context,
man,
trash.
they need to have the voice actors like working with each other. And I was like, wow.
Yeah,
Just-
big budget games have to treat them like big budget movies. If you're gonna have voice acting, it's the world has reached a threshold where movies and video games are.
But they
are
should have
melding.
known that. I'll tell you this.
I know, they
I'm
should.
playing Phoenix Rising. That game's awesome. That game's real fun. It's good.
Would you guys be interested in running for president in 2024?
Negative.
No.
Would you be if we
I
did?
would run for president of a club that plays video games and meets on Sunday
If
nights
we
and
could-
does D&D or something.
Yep.
If we could do a political movement or party, and we could push a candidate like Kanye, someone that wants to be president, and get all our friends involved, like Joe Rogan and Alex Jones, and
Brett Weinstein kind of tried that with the Unity Party.
and keep picking up the pace with Brett.
But I think the problem was, didn't he pick Dan Crenshaw?
I'd
he?
like to get involved with
Yeah,
that.
wasn't
hope
it
he
wasn't it
didn't.
Tulsi and Crenshaw or something?
We should get
not.
Is that what it
Dan
was?
Crenshaw on the show someday. I like that guy.
Let me search for this.
That would be an interesting person to have on.
Brett Weinstein called me one day and he said, who should we promote as the president for our Unity Party? And my suggestion to him was this gentleman named John Robb. John Robb is an amazing technologist, futurist, military strategist, understands the world in a way that most people don't. But he's one of those guys that would just rather be behind the scenes.
Yep,
Yeah.
Gabbard and Crenshaw. And the Trump supporters hate Dan Crenshaw.
Yeah.
So that,
Crenshaw.
so that was a really bad idea. I think Dan's all right, but he is kind of, a little too pro-war for my taste.
Ex-soldier.
Yeah.
Didn't he just release a cringy video? Was that
Oh,
him?
yeah, totally.
What
Super.
happened in the video?
So, did you see this video that Dan Crenshaw put out?
I didn't see
It's
it.
really, really funny, and I think it's meant to be over-the-top cringe. Because if there's one thing conservatives know they can pull off, it's intentional cringe. Now, I'm not trying to be mean, but conservative content is like never really good. Like they try and do movies, they just don't have it. But the one thing they can do is just accept it and then roll with it, and it's funny. So it's basically like he's giving a speech, and then someone comes up like, we got a situation, and then he's walking, he's taking off his suit, like, what's the problem? And they said, we got 2 candidates in Georgia and Antifa. So then he like gets in a plane, and then he like, jumps out of the plane, and he's going down, and they're like, you're gonna need to. They're like, Dan, you're gonna need to, change locations. Antifa's on the ground. He goes, negative. I'm gonna take him on or whatever. And then he like from the sky with a parachute lands on the hood of Antifa's car and then punches through the window and then goes, Loeffler and Purdue, Republicans, and it's super cringe, but it's funny. It's funny. I think as long as he's self-aware, then it works. You know what I mean? But if he really thought that was going to be like a really cool badass thing he was doing, like I don't think that's the case. I think he gets it. It's like over the top silliness, but yeah, kind of funny. Anyway, I digress. Tulsi Gabbard's awesome.
I love
the
her.
left hates her, and Dan Crenshaw I think is he's okay. He's pretty cool. The Trump supporters hate him. So like with all due respect, because Brett's a really, really great dude, I like Tulsi Gabbard, but the left really doesn't like me, and they don't like Tulsi at all.
Yeah,
so I don't know who this candidates
We need
are.
enough people involved that it touches to enough of the consciousness that people will support just something new where people really believe in it and doing the right thing, upholding the Constitution or whatever.
They said Jocko Willink as well.
Jocko. I would love.
I
to get
think
Jocko
actually he
involved.
would get a ton of Unity support,
Secretary
for
of
sure.
Defense. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Ranked choice primary to figure out who the candidates would actually be.
The problem is the best people to be put in positions of power are the ones that don't want it.
Of course.
The problem is the people who want it the most and are egomaniac psychopaths are the ones who
Worse.
usually get the position. And those are the positions that are usually drawn to them.
Yeah. I mean, George Washington didn't want it. U.S. Grant didn't want it. Also, side story, Jefferson Davis didn't want to be the president of the Confederacy either. They just named him, and he's like, oh, crap.
All right. Daniel Maxwell says, off topic, but what do you guys think about restricting all elected officials, state and federal, to 12 years max of being in elected office?
I just said we need mandatory term limits for everyone, not just the president of the United States. It makes perfect sense.
I love it.
It's a complicated job. It's a complex world. There's a learning curve. I don't know. Do you want a bunch of rookies doing it all the time?
Yes, because they're going to be ineffective and not know what they're doing. And they're not going to get a lot of stuff done. And that, to me, is the best thing government could do, is stand back and not do anything.
Yeah, or the ones that are ineffective and they vote for more programs, and then they're just even more of a waste and bigger disaster.
This is interesting. Bailey Ray says, Tim, the town I live in, Montgomery, Texas, has not shut businesses down nor enforced a mask mandate. He made a public statement early on in the pandemic, and I can send a link if you'd like. Freedom. I was mentioning this too earlier when I mentioned there's this town, Mossy Brook, where the mayor was like, nah, we're not shutting down. There's probably a bunch of places where they're like, nah, we just don't hear about it because the news doesn't cover these smaller towns.
Well, and there hasn't been an incident. Mm-hmm. There's no incident,
right?
Unless the state governor like goes in and compels them, with the state troopers or whatever to enforce. There's no incident.
It's not a story.
Maddie says, people keep saying red states would be a third world country. Isn't Texas and Oklahoma economy together the 7th largest in the world? Also, best was to undermine authority is through laughter. We beat the establishment by making them a laughingstock. In fact, isn't that one of the rules for radicals? Ridicule your opponents.
Yep.
Their most important position.
Number 11, I believe.
Yeah, ridicule it. Because you can't argue against ridicule. I was listening to a Hotep Jesus clip. He's really smart. He was mentioning that. He's like, this is what they do. So they try and mock you by saying, if you come out and say, I believe in some kind of certain system to benefit us, they'll say that's white supremacy or something. That way they're essentially triggering their audience and putting you in a position where you can't even argue because it's nebulous. It doesn't mean anything.
Yep. Yikes.
Redon Velu says, Tim, the Supreme Court actually did the right decision by not choosing that case, because that case would create the precedent for other states to sue the precedent for other states to sue each other. And trust me, we don't want that. E.g., California suing Texas on tax laws or gun laws. Perhaps, but I don't necessarily think that the court in the future could say no. Just because precedent exists doesn't mean the courts have to listen to that precedent. They can overturn precedent. My understanding is that when someone says, I cite this law, they're basically saying this is the law as it was settled before, so you should probably agree to it. But the Supreme Court can overturn past decisions and past precedent whenever they want, if they so see it. Born Mexican, raised in America says, Tim, a bill will be introduced into the Texas Congress for Texan to vote to leave the Union. Texan have always seen themselves separate from the U.S. SCOTUS really pissed us off. But haven't we heard things like this before from Texas too? Texas was its own country. Mm-hmm. I also read that when they were being admitted, they were given the choice to be 5 different states. Wow. But they decided to remain as one. And there was some special provision granted to Texas when they joined because they were their own nation, different from many of the other states which were territories.
Boy, I bet they wish they had 10 senators now.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys see Tulsi Gabbard proposed a bill, H.R. 8970, to repeal the U.S. Patriot Act?
Yeah. That was with wasn't with
one other guy.
Thomas Massey, I think.
Yeah, Massey.
Yeah. See, Tulsi's great.
I like that Thomas Massey. I like him.
Yeah, Thomas Massey's a good dude.
Another homesteader.
We could probably get him on the show.
Let's do it. I know.
Thomas Massey?
Yeah.
I'll hit him up.
Thomas.
I'll message him right now.
I'm already talking to his office.
Yeah.
Luke, what the heck?
What? I want to have also the Peak Prosperity guy on. I think he's awesome.
Who's that?
Peak Prosperity, Chris Martinson. I think he would be a great addition just to have on and talk to him because I think he's done a lot of great work that has helped people. But that's my opinion.
I would like to talk to Thomas Massey too.
Yeah.
I came to him through homesteading, and then I realized he was a congressman.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, he's a solar house.
All right.
Nice. He's got a beautiful house that he built himself by hand. It's incredible.
Oh, that's awesome.
Heavy timber made out of stone from the property. It's gorgeous.
Oh, wow.
All right. Hayden said, I think in order to vote, you should have to pass a U.S. citizenship test as well as a basic civics test. If you can't pass basic U.S. knowledge and a test on how the government works, you can't vote. The issue I see is who administers the test and determines the answers. I don't completely agree, but I don't disagree either. Like, you get a license to drive a car. Well, voting is serious. Shouldn't you just go to, and when you're registering to vote, you pass a test so you understand how the process works and why it works the way it does? Sounds like it makes sense to me.
If the test was just about how the process worked.
Mm-hmm.
Voting is a right. It's not a license issued by the state.
Yeah. Well, gun ownership is a right. And in many places, you need a license issued by the state.
I agree. Not saying any if it makes any sense,
no,
but there's a consistency there for sure.
Yep.
I mean, but dude, skin in the game, older. I understand so many of the earlier voting restrictions that were in place now as I get older with more to conserve.
Yeah.
I was so crazy when I was young. I wanted to say that, but I was like, wait, is he going to talk? Is he going to talk? I don't want to talk.
Just let that last comment fester.
It sure did.
Just looking for some good super chats. Just taking it easy.
Super chat.
Got a lot of super chats.
So
Super chatty.
Sean Williams says, prosecutors dropping charges is them telling rioters their lives are worthless, that their lives are worth less than the cost of the ammo used to end it. The day is coming when the people will take the law into hand. And that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about that, and in a couple different ways. Like in V for Vendetta, when the guy's telling the story about he's like, I can see everything happening. And then he's at line where he says, eventually someone will do something stupid, and the cop kills a little girl, and then the people just come out and start beating the cop to death. I don't think we're anywhere near that, but we're at a point where cops are arresting business owners. Sooner or later, someone's going to get seriously hurt. So if this keeps going on, how long until someone actually violently defends their property and their business, and then the cop who shows up shoots the guy?
Big difference between defending your property from a looter and defending your property from a law enforcement officer. Wow. That's a big step to take.
So imagine what we're seeing now, right? We've got multiple videos of business owners yelling at the health inspector, the health officials, citing them, screaming, you can't do this to me. It's not a law. You can't do this. And getting fairly aggressive. At a certain point, I worry that somebody is going to, be in their business. Maybe worry is not the right word, but it's possible. I think would happen. And they're going to be like, my life has been destroyed. I'm starving. I have no money. And this is it for me. I have nothing left to lose. And they just punch somebody in the face who comes in their business. The cops show up and they say, essentially suicide by cop. Like, this is my last stand.
That movie Falling
Then
Down.
What happens? Then what? Yeah. But then what
Myers,
happens when there's a local business owner? Imagine this possible scenario. I don't know how. I don't think it's very likely, but just imagine. You've got a beloved restaurant. The neighbors always come down and they go and they see, Alan, and he makes their sandwiches and he serves them every day. And he's loved by the neighborhood. His life's been completely destroyed now. He's ripped into his savings. He's lost his home. His business has been destroyed. It's been a year of lockdown. They keep fining him. And he says, I have no choice. Either I do this or I don't eat. What am I supposed to do? It's like we saw in Tunisia, the guy who sparked the Arab Spring. The government kept telling him, you can't sell your fruit anymore. He had a fruit cart. And they kept saying no. So eventually he went in front of one of the government buildings and self-immolated. And then the entire North Africa just lit up. People snapped. So imagine you have this guy, beloved member of the community. Everybody knows him. He's a happy little old, late 50s guy who's always, the kid comes by and he's like, let me get you a sandwich. Don't worry. It's on me. And everyone loves him. And then one day after finally being beaten down, he says, enough. And then he tries shoving and fighting. And then the cops tase him. He goes down in a heart attack. And then the people who know and love him just snap and start beating the crap out of everybody who was enforcing these laws. How long until people just break? It happened in Tunisia.
I think that there is a comparison to be made here with the perceptions in the African-American community that the police have already been doing this to them. They've already been killing them. They've already been, quote, violating black bodies and black space. And we've seen the reaction. It's already happening. What you're asking is another subgroup of Americans going to feel as though that the police are their enemy and start lashing back. It's already happening in America right now.
Not even like on that big of a scale. Just like one person. So like I mentioned, the V for Vendetta, the little girl is running in the street and then the guy holds up the badge and then shoots the girl and then the people just come out and they don't care anymore. So like what happens when, I guess it's not even about the police in general. They just don't view him as a cop anymore. They just view him as a guy who killed their friend and they just don't care. They got nothing left to lose. If too many people, this business owner and the people who live around him feel like all is lost, I'll tell you this, because I've now cited this like 5 days in a row. It was a writing from Ulysses S. Grant who said, anybody who feels that the government is repressing them has the natural right to revolution. But just know, when you declare this, you are staking your life, your property, and your guarantees as a citizen. And should you lose, you must live under your conqueror. If they've already taken people's property, stripped them of their guarantees as a citizen, and are now putting their life in jeopardy, that's when you see Arab Spring level snapback.
I was just trying to explain this to my daughter, who's 15 years old, just the other day in the car. And I got amped up. And she's, you know, she sees it sort of my way, but she's also in Montgomery County schools, so she's getting the leftist stuff. I combat it all the time. And I got amped up, man. You're right. You're absolutely right. We had revolution for less of an infringement.
Yeah, seriously.
Oh, yeah.
We have had revolution for less of an infringement than what is happening right now and what will be happening for the foreseeable future. These are the conditions for revolution. It is in our history. There is precedent.
Even other countries, too. I'm worried it'll look more like Syria, though. So, like I mentioned, the Arab Spring. The guy in Tunisia was trying to sell, I think it was apples and fruit. And the government kept stopping him, and he couldn't survive anymore. So he lit himself on fire. Everybody went nuts. There was some papers were written about what caused the Arab Spring. And one of the, they said that there's 3 components that people need. And it's like food, security, and I think maybe like water or something. I don't know, shelter, I think. Shelter, food, and security. Like knowing that you're going to be safe. Otherwise, you start getting anxious when you have no security. If you have no shelter, then you have nothing to lose. You have nowhere to go. And if you're starving, then you become absolutely desperate. And they're basically saying that the price of food was rising so much that people had become so desperate, they just snapped. They were angry and fed up and they didn't care anymore. So I think the riots we saw earlier the year were part of that. They redirected it into, you know, Black Lives Matter stuff. They controlled that flow of anger. But what happens when regular apolitical people who just don't care and aren't interested in politics are brought to the brink? And it's like they're being pushed every day a few more feet to the edge of the cliff. Eventually, they're going to be looking down going, I can't go any further, man. And they're going to turn around and they're going to grab the stick and start swinging with it.
What is so weird I see happening is like these, in my town, Washington, D.C., so many restaurants have shut down. So many bars have closed for good, permanent, gone. Yep. And yet, who do they blame? Yeah. They blame Donald Trump. Right? Yeah. So like where the anger goes is a whole nother question. There could be that kind of anger, but where does it get directed? Yeah.
When you were describing that situation, I was literally thinking about my family members and their stories about the Solidarity movement, where they fought back under communism, since, again, communism set up martial law, and it created a situation where people weren't able to provide for themselves, weren't able to buy products, weren't able to survive, and then they revolted against the communist USSR state and fought back and successfully were able to win.
What did they do?
Well, go ahead.
Well, there was a large, massive peace. First it started as a kind of very large peaceful movement. It was a movement that solidified a lot of the working unions, a lot of the working class, as well as the church, that came together and resisted and called for national strikes that didn't cooperate with the larger kind of system that the USSR wanted. The USSR literally sent down tanks, and they were about to reinvade Poland because of this mass movement that the Polish government tried to squash down and tried to destroy. And we could talk about this tomorrow, because this is I have a lot of things to say, especially my uncle being sent to jail and all these crazy personal stories that I could share. That is a huge testament to what I'm seeing kind of right now happening in the United States. That's a big red flag and a big warning sign for me personally, and from where my family in Poland came from.
Yeah. Well, so I was saying before, is I'm worried what's happening here might be more akin to Syria than it was like the Civil War or the Revolution, in that you've got different factions that don't agree with each other. And so if we get to the point where the pressure from this lockdown breaks people, you'll have Antifa on their autonomous zones, which we've been seeing for some time, and they're armed militias. They're walking around with AR-15s and other rifles, and they're taking this territory and saying it's theirs. Well, why would a conservative group interfere? They're not going to go to Portland. They don't care about Portland. They're going to have their autonomous zone in their area. Eventually, you're going to have the Joe Biden establishment apparatus trying to quell different factions who are pushing back and resisting. And then eventually you might see the leftist groups start to come together and the right-wing groups start to come together. And then the left and the right groups don't agree with each other. But for the time being, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Yeah. So what happens after the establishment, and this is an extreme hypothetical, what happens then if the establishment, government, whatever, just crumbles, and then you have the right-wing faction, the left-wing faction?
We'll have all sorts
some kind of split.
All sorts of cryptocurrencies will start popping up.
I really don't think
we
so.
shake the federal government.
Well, they're trying to pass a new law right now that will make you having your own wallet, your own private keys illegal. The U.S. Treasury Department is trying to pass a proposal right now. Exactly. Why is Trump doing something like this? That's absolutely ridiculous.
He doesn't know.
How many times can you keep saying that until you really finally understand the bigger kind of ramifications behind that?
Totally. I mean, dude, I supported him And I support him 2016, 2020, also openly critical the entire time. And this is one of the key areas for sure. Tim, on your last point, funny to think, who would be a great unifying force that would bring the far right and the far left together? And you know who it is? It's a Kamala Harris presidency.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? That could be what makes people on the far left, the far right actually see that they have a common goal.
Temporarily.
Yes, of course, temporarily.
Yeah.
All alliances are temporary.
But then, what might end up happening is you've got multiple ideological factions with a singular enemy. And then once, they start winning or gaining ground, they shove out one of the other factions.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is how it works. We'll win this fight, and then we'll deal with our stuff later.
No, but like even before they've won,
Yeah.
once they start, realizing that the establishment government is weakening, you get a Mexican standoff.
Totally.
Everyone's staring at each other, and it's like, uh-oh, who's going to pull the trigger?
Totally.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Nathan B. says, the guy briefing Crenshaw in the commercial was Marcus Luttrell, the Navy SEAL they made a movie about him, Lone Survivor. Also, I'm a Trump supporter, and I love Dan. Maybe it's because I'm a disabled vet. I don't think Dan's as bad as everyone says. I think he's kind of a chill dude, and he's someone you can talk to. So he's certainly, but a lot of Trump supporters really don't like him. But the left doesn't like Tulsi, and so I don't see how she's like. I like Tulsi. I think she's great.
You talk to her.
But I don't see. There's got. I don't know who would be a better candidate. Honestly, I don't think there's a unifying leftist candidate. Unless it's an enemy, like you said, Kamala Harris. Someone said Donald Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, 2024. Well, MW says, "What the hell is up with Ian and Banks? My God."
Well, I posted a Thomas Jefferson quote on my Twitter earlier that he thought that standing banks are more dangerous, or the banking establishment is more dangerous than standing armies. And once you see compound interest and the way that they profit off of loans, they used to call it usury, which was illegal by death. They would kill people for requesting interest on loans. Wow. They don't do that anymore.
Now they love it.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a for-profit industry, banking, I don't think. And the fact that they're creating poverty and getting rich off of it.
A bunch of socialists up here.
Yeah. Yep. Bruh says, Jack is wrong. Voting is not a right. It's a privilege granted that can be revoked. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that we have a right to vote. Actually, that's not true.
Which isn't true.
Bruh is wrong. In the Constitution, Amendment 17, it says senators will be appointed by popular vote in each state. No, actually, I'm sorry. I'm wrong. That doesn't necessarily still grant you the right to vote as an individual. It just says senators will be chosen by a popular vote, but then voting could be determined in any which way. It's not specified. So I was wrong on that. Actually, Bruh, I believe is correct. Yeah.
You got me.
All right, let's see what we got here. Nova Zero says, Killdozer, Tim. Please buy a bulldozer for your property. That is a folklore hero that embodies the rage, willing to cause damage but not willing to take lives, and unwilling to be stepped on by the government. His customer said nothing in tacit approval. You know the Killdozer story, right?
You've told it to me, sir.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know, it'd be cool if
I don't know about all that, but
a bulldozer that vibrated really fast, so it dug with its vibration, so you could cut through steel with it.
That'd be super cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Joshua Inzer says, I believe the disabled vets who are also Trump supporters have less issues with Crenshaw than you think. No, you're probably right. I'm not saying every Trump supporter doesn't like Crenshaw. I just know that there's a lot of them that don't.
And I was joking earlier. I actually have no position. I don't really know him very
I think he's a cool dude. I think I disagree with him a lot on a lot of issues, but the difference between him and some of the older Republicans is I don't see Crenshaw as a crony corporatist. He's probably got policy positions I don't like. I know he's spoken in favor of having a presence in the Middle East and stuff. I completely disagree. Far be it for me to tell him. I mean, he was actually there and fought in the war. But then I see someone like Tulsi, who's a major in the National Guard, and maybe not the same experience as him, but, I just don't like war. So, but anyway, Jack, thanks for hanging out.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tim. Thank you very much, Lydia.
Of
Always
course.
so nice to see you.
Of course.
And apparently you have a website, I believe, and
I have
YouTube.
a website. I have a YouTube. Jack Murphy Live everywhere. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, also especially. Got a book, Democrats Are Deplorable. It's very good. It's fantastic. People are saying. People are saying it's a great book. The best people.
Everybody agrees.
And if you're into things like personal sovereignty, masculinity, and brotherhood, come down and check out our all men's organization. We have 400 guys across the country. all focused on enhancing these elements in our lives: masculinity, brotherhood, and sovereignty. Liminal-order.com. Come down, join the list.
Right on. What's your Twitter?
Twitter, Jack Murphy Live.
Right on. And you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Parler at Timcast. Check out my other channels, youtube.com/Timcast and youtube.com/TimcastNews. Check out this podcast on iTunes and Spotify and all other podcast platforms. Leave us a good review if you're listening, because it really does help. The more we get subscribers, followers, and reviews, then they boost you in the rankings. And the more they do that, the more other people see you and then watch. So it's the best way to help share and help grow the show. Otherwise, just word of mouth really helps. So if you like the show, please consider sharing it. We also got Luke, who's chilling.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Jack, from the North Pole. I know it's a very busy time of year for you here.
You're the one with the elf hat on.
Hold on, I got to point something out. Though. Someone made a comment in the chat saying that they don't trust men who dye their beards.
Yeah, well, I'm not your
guy. You dye
boss.
your beard?
Oh, fake news.
That's why I brought it up, so you can correct the record.
The beard is perfectly natural. My loving girlfriend, who's a hairstylist, gave me a trim right before
it looks
I came
extra
up
good today.
But the color just is how it.
The color is totally natural, and I'm testing out a beard product, Mad Viking beard products. Testing it out today. We'll see how it goes.
Right on.
Excellent.
Luke, do you have
So yes, if you would like to find more stuff from me, check out my YouTube channel. We Are Change, and wow, coincidentally, I'm also wearing one of the T-shirts which you could get.
Bill Gates is not a medical doctor.
Which states a fact, which you could also purchase on teesprings.com/We Are Change. No, stores. Teesprings.com. We Are Change. Just look it up. You'll be able to find it, and that supports my work. And thanks for allowing me to push that.
Yeah.
Right on. We also got this weird dude with a crystal ball.
I am a gorilla. Live strong.
Yeah, there you go.
The opposite.
That's me.
Anti-Jones.
Thank you guys, everybody, so much. And shout out to you guys in the chat that have been watching and supporting us for so long. And so
smash that like button.
Yes, like it and share it with your friends if you like it as much as I do. I'm Ian Crossland. You can follow me online at Ian Crossland. Do you have merchandise, Jack? Because I want to get a Jack Murphy hat.
I have some merchandise. Check it out, jackmurphylive.com. Follow me on Twitter. I'll pimp it there hard. Don't you worry about it.
Excellent.
And don't forget to follow Sour Patch Lids, who's pushing all the buttons.
Yes, I'm pushing all the buttons in the corner. You can follow me on Twitter, Sour Patch Lids, LYDS.
We will be back tomorrow, 8 p.m. live, so leave us those good reviews. Smash that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and thank you all so much for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.
Bye, guys.